Okay, ladies and gentlemen, about a clock on the wall. It's showing 6 o'clock, so we will call this meeting to order. Please stand for the invocation and the pledges.
Let us pray. Holy Father, creator of all, not only during this month of Thanksgiving, but always, we thank you for your love, for all you provide, all we have, and all we will ever need. We welcome you into this place. We ask for your guidance. Please lead us and help us to do what is best for our city, the city of Richwood. Please give us the grace and love as we do all we can to the best of our ability to show you how thankful we are for all you are. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. You may be seated. Oh, grab your chair instead of mine. Okay. Let the record reflect that we have all council members present, with the exception of Councilmember Langford, who has resigned due to having to move out of the city due to a family matter. We get the list up here. Okay, if it has not, we will have also public comments for the public hearing when we talk about the R4 zoning. But if this is outside the R4 zoning, this is what these public comments would be for. Okay. Is anyone wishing to speak to council outside the R4 zoning issue? Outside the R zone? Okay. Yes, sir. Please come on up.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
This was more or less a question for you, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering if you had any updates on that water treatment plant trying to go in.
We haven't heard anything other than that the state is looking at it, and the last I heard it was going to be somewhere from another 6 or so months before we hear anything else.
Okay.
But nothing. Nancy's been trying to keeping us in touch, and the last we heard was just that the hearings had been held and that statements had been. Now they're going through the process of reading the statements, and so the TCQ is under sunset review this year. So hopefully all those comments will also be sent over to the governor and those reviewing the TCQ. But as soon as we get something, and a matter of fact, I'll do my best to try to check this week and see what we get, see if we get the information back out.
Are you aware of any Bastrop Bio committee that's ever been formed on the bio? Because a few commissioners have asked me to try to find a president of that so we can.
I have not heard of anything or anyone that's been on that.
Okay.
But I can look into that too. I know plenty of folks that live on the Bastrop Bio and out in the county, so I'll check with them and see.
Okay.
I do know some folks had a committee. I don't know if it was ad hoc or if it was just if it was something official, but they were trying to get the bio dredged out.
Yeah.
And so that's the only group that I know of, and so far they haven't been winning that battle either, because of it all goes to the harbor now instead of
Port of Freeport.
Yes.
And they're the ones responsible for it, but
correct.
I just didn't know if you had any connection or knew anybody with the.
I will do my best to find out. I'll talk to some people and see if there are any issues or if there are any committees out there, but I haven't heard of any.
It's very old, and I wouldn't even know where to begin
Okay.
So I didn't know
Well,
if you
I'll
had
hit
any
a few
knowledge.
people up, see what I can do.
Okay, I appreciate it.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, who else? Mr. Garrison.
Good afternoon, everyone. William Yerson, resident 244 Briar Creek. As a resident of Richwood, I do hereby request the following information be investigated as a result, be shared publicly about the actions of Councilwoman Melissa Strawn. I find this destructive and possibly illegal behavior to be impedant to the continued success of our city. Oppressive, abusive official capacity, intentionally subjects another to repeated harassment and mistreatment, 39.03, with intent to harm another. Repeated harassment of the city manager and the police chief, false allegations, rumors, and investigations, hostile emails, tampering with city employees for own agenda. This has cost the city thousands of dollars, caused undue stress, and created a hostile and caustic work environment. Obstruction and retaliation of a public servant, 36.06. Melissa Strawn interjected herself into a current and ongoing criminal investigation by contacting witnesses and seeking information from the city manager as evidenced by emails obtained through open records request. This was a clear attempt to influence the outcome of the investigation and steer the results. In the case of sending an officer to Uvalde, Melissa Strawn contacted the city manager in the case and revealed that her husband said DPS had requested that no other officers needed to be sent to Uvalde. The city manager then contacted the Uvalde Emergency Operations Center and was told that they really needed help and they had room ready for our officer. Our officer ended up working almost a week, working 12-hour shifts, and then they were truly thankful and allowing our officer to help. This was only not true, it was deceitful and disrespectful. After all, our small city relies on help from other sources during storm recovery. This was an intentional act of subversion to prevent the chief of police from sending help and possibly garnering accolades for our city and his department. Improper influence, 36.04. Again, Melissa Strawn tried to influence an ejectory proceeding by contacting the superintendent and having him write a letter to the city. Coercion of a public servant, 36.03. As evidenced by emails obtained by public records request, there are many attempts by Melissa Strawn to use her position to harass, threaten criminal prosecution, and threaten termination impacting several city employees. She has also used her position to inflict harm by trying to influence zoning disputes against a neighbor which she does not like. Lastly, a violation of the Code of Ethics by municipal officer. Melissa Strawn texted her husband about an interaction that took place within an executive session to her husband, who then appeared at the council session, interrupted that meeting with threats to the mayor based on the text from his wife during the executive session. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Okay, any other? All righty. Let's move on to item 6, consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve consent agenda.
Okay, we have a motion made by Councilmember Johnson. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second by Councilmember Strawn. Councilmember Johnson, how do you vote, sir?
Aye.
Councilmember Strawn, how do you vote, ma'am?
Aye.
Councilmember Yarborough, how do you vote, sir?
Aye.
Councilmember Escalante, how do you vote, sir?
Aye.
Okay, let the record reflect that all members answered in the affirmative. Motion carries. Okay, let's see. We do need to declare the vacant.
That was in there. Can we make
Okay,
that
that's
verbal real quick, just as a
I was going to say, yeah, I
free
want to
advertisement?
thank him for his service to the
Yeah.
city also.
We would have to remove it from consent agenda,
Okay.
but we can
Okay.
do that during your closing remarks.
Okay. We'll open up a public hearing and possible action adopting ordinance 22-500, amending Appendix B zoning ordinance, Section 4, District Subsection 5, R4 Single Family Rural Residential Zoning District for the Code of Ordinances. So we have folks that are here to discuss this, and we'll go ahead and give you the opportunity to speak. And we'll start with Mr. Challenger.
Thank you, guys. So, I like my company, and I would imagine that you guys like this city as much as I like my company. The fact that you sit here and take the abuse just makes me think that you love it. As a matter of fact, you might like it a little bit more than my company. But, so I have a company that I would say is probably equivalent in size and scope to this city that I built from scratch. So I thought maybe I would just kind of give you a rundown on how I would handle it within my company. Because I do deal with issues all the time. First and foremost is I wouldn't be destructive. That's important. It's good advice. I actually brought a little example for you of an old document. It's on a $100 bill right here, lower right-hand corner. It states that you shouldn't be destructive. Just to give you, I think that tearing down buildings is destructive. I think that we should be focusing on what's important right now in that neighborhood, and that should be building. You know, when you get to my level in a company, you stop managing by rules and you start managing by values. Because rules change based on the mission, which leads me to the mission. What is it? I would think mission is building at this particular time. But you can't define what the mission is if you don't know what the vision is. So what is the vision? What is the vision of the city of Richwood? What is the vision of the neighborhood? Well, just using my imagination, I imagine a rural community. Drive out in the country, you see country homes, kind of close your eyes and imagine what it would look like. And it's basically that on smaller acres, more manageable, close to the grocery store. Lots of benefits there. So, but you got to understand that if you don't establish a vision, you can't conduct a mission. Jesus says if a blind man leads another blind man, you'll both end up in a ditch. Does the captain know the destination? So, without the vision, you cannot establish rules. You cannot conduct a mission. But it's more than that. It's vision, mission, and culture. If you don't have a culture, you can't successfully conduct a mission. As an example, take the worst person you can imagine. Selfish, destructive, just a mean person. And you let them get away with whatever they want. If you have not established a culture, that is your culture, is that bad person. So vision, mission, and culture is important. If you want to fix this problem, because it is deeper, it's deeper than this causing division and hate. I hate to say it, but it was already there. It was already there because of the lack. And maybe you do have the vision. Please share it with us, because we'd like to know. But I would think that when I imagine that country home, sounds like a great opportunity. Sounds like a great selling point. Country homes out in the distance, I kind of think they had a barn. Not to make it funny, because it's not. So if you want to fix the problem, I think that we need to start with vision, mission, and culture. And that's what I feel like expressing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Challenger.
Okay. Is that Clinton?
Clinton.
Miss Clinton.
I'm just
I thought that's what it was. It looked like Whitney.
I was just gonna take a minute and, I guess give my opinion on what was submitted in the agenda packet. I'm in favor of changing the ordinance to be 7.5 feet for the bayou lots and 15 cap on the 10%. lot width for the rest of the lots. And then also, I just want to let the mayor and the city manager both know that I am very grateful for the work that Kirsten has done for me on this. I've submitted multiple public record requests, and she's been nothing but informative, respectful, professional, and a lot of the knowledge that I have has come from those public record requests. So I'm very grateful that she took the time to work on those and find those documents for me. So, thank you all.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Mr. Clinton, anything?
No, sir. She captured all of it.
All right. Mr. Coffey?
How you doing?
Doing
33502 Blue Crab Court.
good.
I was just coming to say that I'm in favor for changing the setbacks
Okay.
to what our survey says.
Okay.
I just built a barn myself, and of course, I ran into a few issues myself. Like I was the general contractor for my house, and I read my survey. If I could build my house 15 feet from the edge of the property line, I don't see no problem building my barn 15 feet from the edge of the property line. I'm in favor for changing the setbacks to what our survey says.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Coffey.
Mr. Podhurdy?
Agree with him.
Okay. Mr. Strong?
I'm good for right now.
Okay. That was Ms. Steves?
She said no. She said no.
Okay.
No, yes, Durham.
Mr. Durham?
I'm just in favor of changing the build lines as well. I believe that the bio lots were changed back in 2008, but the verbiage is very, very hidden, so we need to get some clarification on that.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I can't read that one.
Don't get me lying to you. 33211 Amber. Oh, it's a no. It's a no.
No,
Miss
okay.
Moriarty's.
Miss Moriarty?
Hi, I'm Cindy Moriarty. I've met most of you already a few times. And thank you, first of all, for entertaining all of us in several meetings. I know Kirsten has entertained emails, phone calls. I know it's been a lot of work, and we appreciate you giving us this time to say our opinion. The Moriarty opinion is that we should keep the easements as they are. I said that at the last meeting. I said that in my email. I think there's a lot of reasons why, just as other people have other reasons for wanting to change them. So I know that when this started, it became with one property who, if I understand everything correctly, violated city ordinance, asked for a variance, denied. And then a movement came to change the easements, which then affects not just their personal property and the one next to them, but everyone in the community. And now it is affecting me at a bayou lot. And I am not in favor of that. I have very nice neighbors on one side of the culvert and some other building next to me who do want to encroach into their current easement. So that means their secondary accessory building that they're going to build will now be, if that's correct, 7 or 7.5 feet closer to my property. I don't want that. Lots of reasons, which brings me to a couple of my questions for council. And how are you going to, how are you in the process to do your due diligence to arrive at your decision? I know that, has anyone from council been out to, for example, the Clinton and the Callaway properties? And I'll cite those because if I am correct, that is what if the ordinance is changed, what the ordinance will be close to. Correct? So has anyone been out there to either of the properties?
It would be closer.
It would be
I've been out
closer
there
than
several
that.
times. I've looked at all
Okay,
of them.
and have you been to both properties and stood on both to see the viewpoint from both?
No, I haven't looked at all of them,
Okay.
at all the properties, but I have been, the The Clintons I've looked at, and let's see, Mr. Durham's, I've been by their place.
Have you been on the Callaway property?
No.
So my
Been on the
concern,
line.
you've been on the line. So my thought as a citizen is I'm thinking, okay, how, you know, this is up to council/planning commission to make this decision. And so I'm thinking, how are they coming up with the process, regardless of my opinion or my neighbor's opinion, right? This is a due process situation. So what I'm hearing is that you've been to a property that wants to change the easement, but you haven't stood on the property that wants to keep the current easement. I just think that's a point of concern for all citizens, and I hope that you think about that going forward with your decision-making process. You probably all have your decision made up, and none of what we say is going to matter a hill of beans, but we appreciate the opportunity. I want to point that out. So y'all have been on one side but not the other, because my concern is, like, from my property, I love my neighbors. They're great people. I understand they want to do that. I respect their opinion. I don't hate them or think bad of them, but I really don't want their accessory building any closer to me. I don't want it that close. I want the view from my house to be nicer. I would like, the reason I moved from Northwood in Lake Jackson, which is a nice neighborhood, out to this community was because we have more land. And I feel like if we change the easements, we are encouraging our neighbors. Secondly, my question to council is, as part of your due process in a planning commission, what kind of data collection or research has been done in order to reach this point? Has there been environmental research or flood research?
No, ma'am.
How that would affect? So my concern again is, being that I was president of our HOA and that we had, you know, with the new BFEs changing, coming in and working with council last year to update all of our plot plans, that was a crazy mess. But I know that since the BFEs have changed now, so if you're telling me an accessory building on my neighbor's property can be higher and closer to me, common sense says it's going to push that water onto my property. Yes, I did choose to buy on the bayou and on the culvert, so I'm 50% bordered by water. However, in the past hurricanes, we were fine, as you all know. But it is a concern, and I don't think it is a fair assessment, in my opinion, for everyone. And I hope that going forward, council will consider these ideas. So the Planning Commission has had no research on environmental or flood, or I don't know, anything else that a planning commission would research before making a decision, but they have done a popular vote. Sent out, council has, or city has sent out the letter and given the opportunity for people to come to council to several meetings. I appreciate that. I will say several people have reached out to me and said, hey, I'm not saying anything. There's been some very divisive attacks that have happened within our neighborhood if you don't agree with a certain group. And they've blocked people on social media and asked to not be contacted. So it's become a hostile thing. So a lot of people don't want to come. I know that you can't hear their voices, so you're not going to see the reflection. They don't want to submit anything via email because somebody's going to get it and ask them questions. And they don't want that. They just want to quietly say, hey, here's my opinion. Lastly, if council votes, you know, whatever council votes is what council votes. That is respected by all citizens. But again, as a citizen, my concern is, and I think about this on different boards I've been on and whatnot, that, okay, if I'm going to make a decision and I'm just doing one form of research before we make our decision. Yes, you've collaborated. I'm sure you've talked amongst each other and yourselves. So in my eyes, as a concerned citizen, if the ordinance is changed this evening, then council, planning commission, is rewarding ordinance violation. So someone can violate an ordinance, be denied a variance, get a movement to change the ordinance, so then everything else previous is null and void. And my thought is, going forward, If I'm thinking this in my head, what are the other citizens thinking about? What other ordinances do you not like in the community? I can violate. I can request a variance and then still get what I want. So my lasting thought with everyone is about integrity of the due process and doing your due diligence. I am sure that you are doing that. I just want to make a plea to really consider that for the betterment of not just the residents of Oakwood Shores, but of the city as a whole. Not just because you've heard people talk. If you haven't been there, I don't think you can really see what the difference is. And again, thank you for your time and listening to everyone. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Moriarty. Let me say this real quick. Although we may not have had a formal study on flooding, we've discussed among the city manager, public works, different people about the flood. We've had the discussion with them because they know. Each one of us, I'm sure, I know that I have studied the issues with flooding down here. I've lived down here all my life, and I've lived here during some of the major floods, so I understand what we're up against out there. But so we haven't spent a formal engineering study done on it. However, we have looked at it, and it's in the back of our mind. Now, as far as discussing it amongst ourselves, we don't do that. That's Texas open meetings. When we make a decision, it's done in Open Meetings Act. So there's no inside thing going on or no texting back and forth. Tonight, when the decision's made, it's made fairly. We're looking at not only what's best for the city, we're looking for what's best for the citizens. That goes not only for just Oakwood Shores. In this case, it is Oakwood Shores specifically. But when we make our decisions, we have to consider the city as a whole. We have the ability to have variances simply because there are some things that individual situations that come up. This one's been unique in that the situations all came up before the variance request was made. And that's where the problem lies. But again, when the citizens come up and they tell us, we have a group of citizens come up and they tell us, this is what we're thinking. This is what we would like to see. We listen to the citizens, and it is it's going to be based on what's good for the city, what's good for the citizens, and what the citizens wish for. A lot of times when a variance is not approved, it's because citizens have stepped up and said, no, we don't want this. When variances are approved, it's because citizens have stepped up and said, it's not a problem. These are the things that we use when we come up to these variances. We put ourselves in a position of neutrality. We base it on the facts. We base it on the discussions that we get out of these public hearings and what the citizens themselves tell us. And then we use the information that we can get as far as other issues, the considerations. We pass them on, and we get or read up on them and use our past history to finally make the decision. But each individual council member has to look at that individually and make their determination. There's nothing that goes on behind the scenes.
Mayor?
Yes.
Is this one that we can comment? Okay.
Yes.
So I found I had done an open records request, and I got the information for the original neighborhood, like the original, like, I don't even know how many pages long it is, but it's all on this flash drive. And it does show on there, I don't know if you can pull it up if you want, but it shows rainfall, how much rainfall will affect which drainage ditches, what the pitch of all the roads need to be, what the scale of all the ditches need to be, or the angle of all the ditches, including the main drainage ditches, the smaller ones, all of it. It also shows how each and every lot drains. So which way they flow into which ditch that they flow into. It talks about culvert designs and all these things in order to protect every person in Oakwood Shores and their property from water, from rain, as best you can. Of course, there's no guarantees ever. But since the new flood elevations have come out, since all the new properties have been built at different elevations and things like that, it is something that, you know, that would be worth looking into to see, because these were before the 7.5 between the two houses, that variance was granted. And this also includes, I have to assume, I don't know for sure, since it was done in '08, it also would include the 25-foot setback for accessory structures, only because that was created specifically for this one zone and it was a collaboration between the developer and the city to create these strict things. So whether or not those play into how each subdivision drains, because I don't know if, you know, it's a history lesson on this. Some of these lots have 75-foot easement along the drainage ditch. So they can't build 75 feet. So I know the bayou lots are 100, but all the lots that are across the main drainage, the big ones, are 75 feet. You can't build that far, you know, so you're 100 foot from the road and 75 foot in. And that is to protect everyone. Yes, would I like to be able, I'm one of the 75. Would I like to be able to build further back? It'd be great. But you have to look at what's best for everybody in the community. And when it comes to drainage, that's a big thing because we have had floods. So I don't know if it's here, if you want to plug it in, show it, but it was done when the subdivision was created. And it was very meticulous, and it is hundreds of pages long. And anyways, so that's just to answer your question about wasn't, it was, but not a new one.
Okay,
With the new elevation and the new proposed setbacks.
And one thing that we need to consider too is part of the, I believe it was the plat, was the HOA handles the drainage. That's all up to the HOA, it's not the city. So we do consider it, we do think about it, but, you know, and again, we consider it, but again, it's not something that we control. So.
Just to clarify, changing setbacks doesn't grant easement encroachment.
Right.
Easements are still the easements regardless of your.
Right. No, I just meant the way that water would flow.
Yeah.
You know, if we're requiring so much around these, and you know, some of the ones that are the smaller drainage ditches are 40 foot instead of 15.
I just
You know,
don't
so
want
there
you to
are.
think that if we change it to 15 and there's a 20-foot easement, that easement.
No, the
supersedes
easements
it.
are still there. No, I'm just saying that it was very meticulously drawn out for each and every plot to show how the water would drain into which drainage ditches it'll go. So now there have been quite a few changes that have happened just with the elevation. You know, just something to consider. It was just an answer to your question. That was something I was going to bring up later, that I had it if anybody wanted to look.
Ms. Strong, may I ask a question?
Yeah.
Let me go ahead. Well, go ahead and ask
That
her
was all I had
question, and then.
Ms. Strong, I was just curious as for your research.
Her name.
If we
What's your name, sir?
I'm Jimmy Silvers at 31410 Bayou Bend. When we start talking about those, you know, protecting for flood and water and drainage and those type of things. So if I were to take just a scenario where I take my property and I build my house, no matter what my lot size is, I build my house on the very back of my property line, to the very edges of my property line, to my build lines, and to the front. We're no longer an accessory building, we're part of my main structure. All of those things should have been taken into account to allow for flood or for water drainage anyway. So what we're talking about here are setbacks on utility structures.
Right.
So the utility structure should have no bearing on the way that property drains, because you would have to take into account you can build your house completely from building line to building line and building line to building line.
So with no accessory building. So that all those drainages should have been taken into account already.
So that's a great thought, and I did think of that too. Since all the homes are required to be built at the or not required, but have to be at least the 100-foot setback. So yes, you're going to have a line of houses. What's behind those houses? So if you have a 50-foot barn, you know where the water's going to drain off, and then you have a pool. So say you've got 7.5 foot with your barn that all drains down, and then your neighbor has a pool. Well, say they're at different elevations because now the elevation's different. So now all this water that drains off the barn is going to go into this person's pool. So say it's a horse stable that does that and drains into someone's pool. Is that sanitary? Is that safe? Is that something that we need to do more research on before we allow for something like that to happen? And since the city allows
That's
horses,
what the easements are for. That's what the 7.5-foot easement or the 15-foot easement is for, because
do you feel
the
that,
same thing with my water running off of my house.
do you feel that 15 foot is enough? Have you measured 15 foot?
It's already in the building line. That's in the plot. All we're talking about, you're talking about a.
No, I'm talking about
utility
houses.
structure
I'm talking about
versus a house.
houses versus barns and pools.
If the
They're
plot
two
says
different
it should
things.
be at 7.5 feet, it should be at 7.5 feet, whether it's a utility building or the house, because, and I'm just going
Yeah,
to
no, you're
drainage.
fine.
The drainage is equal. So that should have been taken into account when they plotted the neighborhood. When they lay down a plot, they plan for flood, they plan for runoff, they plan for a horse barn,
They
plan
did
for those
not
things.
plan for 7.5 foot on this.
Okay.
The initial plan was for 15. Nowhere in here does it say 7.5. The city granted a variance for 7.5 later.
Okay.
It was 30. It was
Okay.
15 and 15, and that's what this is done for. Now, the city granted a variance. We don't have a whole lot of information on it, but they did grant a variance about, what, almost a year after, no, a couple of months after this was done. And they granted for 7.5 foot, which cut it in half, which is the same setbacks as R1, like the rest, like most of the other subdivisions in Richwood. So it's a little tight if you, I mean, personally, but that was a variance that was granted, but that's not what's on here. This is only for 15.
My point was not what
Yeah.
you personally think, my point was just
Yeah.
about
Right.
built.
No,
Lot
but
line's
this
a
is
lot line,
15.
or build line's a build line, whether it's an accessory building or not, I'm still taking up
And-
that space, so water running between two properties.
And I don't know that they thought that through,
In the same
honestly.
way with aesthetics for the back, sorry, it's the same way with the aesthetics for the back, we hear people talking about, oh, well, aesthetically, I don't want to look at a barn that's set 7.5 feet from, or 15 feet from my property line. But there's a lot between me and Mr. Durham that folks are planning to build on. They can build literally 100 feet back from the river's line. So when I sit on my back porch, is it going to block my view? Absolutely 100%. But whether it's their home or their accessory building, it's the same view.
Right.
So if they want to push their house all the way to the back and the HOA grants them permission to build that house, I can't do anything about it. The setback lines and the build lines are where they are. So whether it's an accessory building or whether it's their main structure, it should be no difference to me, because again, they can push all the way to the back if they want to. They can build all the way up against my property line, within 7.5 feet. And yes, I can hear them fighting over what they're having for dinner, but I knew that when I bought my property because I knew there was a 7.5 foot setback line.
Thank you, Mr. Silvers.
Yes, sir, thank
Let me start with Councilmember Johnson. We'll go down the road. Well, you got any questions?
We still have a lot more comments to go.
Okay, all right.
I want to get through the
Matt,
comments.
you got some?
Yeah, I'll make some comments to Ms. Moriarty's. So I have been to the Clintons, and I have driven by from the main road at the Durhams and the property across from the Clintons. I have also seen photos from the backyard and from inside the house of Miss Calloway, I believe, that she submitted. So I think the root cause of this is truly a depth issue. There's I think, just some unhappiness to the depth at which they built, but it's within compliance. So what was brought up was the side setback. If I look at the views that I have from Miss Calloway's house, from the backyard and from the, you see a big brown barn. It's not the prettiest thing in the world. It's not trees, it's not open country. But I cannot see with my eyes if it's 16 feet or if it's 25 feet from that view. If you're talking about depth-wise and you pushed it up 20 feet so where you don't see the shop at all and you see woods, oh yeah, that would be great. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking pushing it sideways from her view. She's not changing a panorama of a barn. That's my opinion. The floods. I have not requested, nor do I think it is a smart decision for the city to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on another flood study where an engineer will tell us there are flood risk. There are flood risk in Oakwood Shores. There are flood risk in all of Richwood. I do not think that an accessory structure setback matching the primary structure is more risk for floods. We're talking about some of these, we can put our homes at that 15-foot mark or the 20-foot mark, but the accessory structure's got to be an extra 10 to 15 feet inside of that. I mean, if we're talking floods, the slab and foundation and the buildup of my house is going to push a lot more water into a drainage easement. I do agree. I think that's what the easements are for. When the county plotted them, that should be protection for everybody. Just like here in the city, it's 7.5 foot, but that's the same protection for us. For house slabs, accessory structures, detached garages, so to make sure that we don't have flooding. One nice thing about most of the rest of the city of Richwood is neighborhoods were built relatively soon together, so they match. Flood elevations match. This is a neighborhood, unfortunately, being built out over 20 years, and flood elevations now are being discussed. We had a major hurricane that showed everybody, maybe we're too low. Maybe the average house height that we were building at maybe wasn't high enough. So now we're having people, they want to protect their future investment and their current build, so they're going to build higher. So those are just the questions you asked.
You got anything, Rory?
No, I'm going to wait for the rest of the comments.
All right, and one other thing about it. Again, when it comes to drainage, that's something that maybe the homeowners association in the future should do a little bit more looking at too when they are doing their approvals. If there's going to be some questions about it, or maybe they need to look at what their standings are or what their rules are. When it comes to us, then it's basically again we're going to be listening to we're going to be impartial, and we're going to look at the situation as a whole and make the decision based on what's good for the community and what's good for the citizens and what the citizens in that area want. Especially since this is a singular zone. So, okay, next was Mr. Podherney. Are you? Okay, I thought I saw his name.
I know, but we're way down here.
Okay. Oh, he already spoke.
He
That's
said
right.
Samuelson.
Yeah, that's right. Miss Callaway. Yeah.
Good evening. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. I have a cough drop. So, I know there's a lot of discussion about the flooding, so I do have some thoughts that I had already put down, so that might be part of it too, but I kind of wrote it down to address y'all this afternoon or evening. So rural residential property is obviously defined as land consisting of 1 acre or more. So Oakwood Shores is the only subdivision in Richwood, and that meets that criteria. And so in my mind, regardless of what's happening next door to me, it's still not justified to impose reduction of setbacks that would meet that of an R1 that has small lots. It just doesn't seem that that's what we originally came to and were attracted to for that land and what we purchased, and more importantly, it's what's driving people to come to those subdivisions, because we're so close to the rural, to the urban, but we're rural, so that becomes attractive because it is an area that allows you to have more space, and that's an advantage that helps us maintain our property values. And being surrounded by open space and natural environment, yeah, that's appealing. That's why we bought there. So our current 25-foot setback, it does preserve that feel that we paid when we bought the property there. And the size of Oakwood Shores, the lots, most of them, and when you're shopping for something like that, as big as an investment like that, they're still in the city of Richwood at those setbacks that y'all have had on the books. And there was some due diligence in the history of the leaders and the work that was done here to come up with that. And so we're comparing apples and oranges to an R1. Let's be like the R1. Let's use the lots. It's not the same thing. And most of us chosen to buy there based on those setbacks. I just purchased 3 other acres based on those setbacks, and have also looked at the fact that just because we have a situation that has brought this movement, you know, there is a lot more of the subdivision you have not heard from. You're talking at a very small population based on the voices that you've heard of what we are making those changes. And so the character of the community is defined by zoning. Zoning ordinances exist to influence the nature of a community and protect their character in a growing city. Cities and leaders did create that with growth in mind, and there was due diligence done at that time. So the fact that these ordinances govern a lot more than just our property setbacks. So I think changing our setbacks will diminish our subdivision's rural character and the space, and then we're coming to become just an ordinary subdivision and be diminished to R1 setbacks. And that movement is really coming from different people with different opinions, obviously, and I understand that, but you're still in the city of Richwood. And those were the codes that we agreed to and that we bought to. And if people don't want to follow any ordinances, there's plenty of county in the land. You know, the land and the county that will accomplish that. But really, our focus should be on the big picture of that subdivision and the long-term future of our community and improving it for the better going forward, not on the movement and noise of just of a few of the total population. Do the numbers of the population and the number of people that you've heard them from, good or bad, indifferent, or everybody's opinion. But most of all, it should never be to benefit one specific situation in making these changes of that magnitude. And as far as the risk that we're adding to that is that we don't know exactly, once all those lots are filled, if we change it to 7.5, all that closeness will create some risk on fire and on flooding, and that cannot be ignored. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any questions?
No? Okay, let's see. I guess that would be Mr. Waggle?
Yeah, James Wiggle,
Yes, sir.
32026 Bayou Bend Drive. So everybody has been talking about, have you been out there and measured how far it is and this and that, and talking about 7.5 feet, which it's my understanding that the 7.5 feet is just for the 1 acre lots. But you know, if you want to see how far, like from 25 foot to 10 foot is, it's from the edge of that light fixture to the edge of that light fixture. If that allows someone to be able to put a structure on their property that they really want, then I'm all for changing those setbacks. I mean, it's not that far. What difference is going to make? I mean, if we want to address drainage, I think we need to have the flow lines of the ditches regraded. Everything's going to run either to the bayou or to the ditches. If the ditches don't flow, then we've got other issues. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Weagle.
Thank you, sir.
And just to comment on the ditches, sir, that and the mayor elaborated on that. That's the HOA's responsibility, not the city's. And
that's a different argument.
yeah, and I believe that's why the HOA has been so adamant about people keeping their ditches clean, flowing well, because if one person dams it up, it affects so many houses behind them. I know there's been an uproar about ditch letters and whatnot, but that's the reason.
Can I say something about the ditches? Behind my house, who's responsible for the, like, behind my house? It's one of the larger ditches.
That's the HOA, that's an outfall ditch.
So what do we do about the big tractors that come through there and put ruts in it, you know, like this?
That's the HOA, it's not the city.
We got, just so,
Okay.
this is about the setbacks.
About the setback.
Well, you have some concern, I've allowed a little bit of leeway. We need to really keep it towards the setbacks, not the drainage.
Well, I'll get with you after this.
So, I apologize, but,
Mr. Coffey, did you have Another question, sir? Or,
I don't got a question, I got another good comment for you.
yes, sir.
Look, I just built a barn, 33502 Blue Crab Court. My neighbor, when I hauled dirt in, he says, man, why'd you bring so much dirt in for a barn? It's like, hey, that's what they require. I said, really, to tell you the truth, I said, really, I wanted to make it as high as my house. So when I put the dirt in to build the barn, I made it as high as my house. Well, when I built my house in 2019, the rules have changed since then. So when they come measure the foundation for the barn, they say, oh, it's not high enough. I text my neighbor, I said, hey, thought it was too high. It ain't high enough. We got to put more dirt. So just imagine if I had a horse stall, like Ms. Strong said, if I had horses in that barn that I put up, that runoff, the flooding, it's going to be affected, right? I don't think barns and out structures should be considered with flood issues. Can you believe that insurance does not cover anything inside my barn if it floods? My barn is higher than my house.
And that brings up a good point too. I'm glad you said that, because a house or a barn has walls, you know, to protect it from the water coming in, at least a little bit. You can sandbag, you can do different things if you know it's coming. It's different for like a pool or something that's, you know, like an open horse stable that the water can flood into, that doesn't have necessarily the walls and the buildup and the concrete and the structure. So, you know, you do have to take all these things into account when you make changes, like you said, elevation and distance.
Do you think 7.5 feet is going to make a difference whether the horse crap runs into your pool or not? I mean, I'm just asking.
Well, because it is 25 feet. It's supposed to be 25 feet. So I think that 50 feet, so I think 50 feet is a huge amount of space versus 15. So right now we've got 25 and 25 versus 7.5 and 7.5. So if you're asking to decrease
50 feet versus 15. So 15 feet, again, as the next gentleman said, is from here to here. 50 feet is from there to there. I mean, if water's going to run, it's going to run.
I'm no cowboy, but I've been in a couple horse pastures, and them horses shit all over the place. They don't shit in the barn. I mean, I don't know why. I don't know why we're concerned with.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't.
We're just talking about the barn. The whole thing.
It doesn't happen in the barn. I mean, it's all across the property where they're using the restroom. I mean,
so I don't think the animal feces is an issue.
It will run one way or another, and it is, you know, I've mowed enough pastures, I can tell you that it's not, it's, but again, your comments are appreciated. I want to go back to Josh. Is there anything you want to say?
Real quick, is this a problem with the property lines, or is this a problem with the actual property owner doing their due diligence and putting their building where it needs to go? That would be my question. If they actually planned it out right, it could save a lot of this. And I think the variance thing, you do it on a case-by-case basis, talking to the neighbors, save a lot of time. That's just me. As a property owner, that's it.
Thank you. Okay. Just one more time, any other comments, questions? Yes, sir.
I got a quick comment. Everybody, Gennaro Cardenas. I'm probably the youngest one out there. Kid. So I worked my ass off of school, saved a bunch of damn money, and I want to live in the best neighborhood in Missouri County, so I chose Oakwood Shores. So that's good, right? It's a good start. Built all right now. It's not as big as I'm sure y'all's. Pretty big house though. So building the house right while I was working and doing high school and all that jazz, trying to meet specs and do it as pretty as I can and save my cash and go out there one day, get out my parents' house, right? Followed all the rules, like y'all wrote on specs. I'm an engineer, by the way, so I followed all that. I just want to say a quick comment, right? As much as beautiful as houses are out there, and when my cousins come and visit me and whatever, they just tell me how beautiful the houses are out there, to be honest. Building barns and all that good stuff, it adds on to it too as well. It's extremely beautiful. My neighbor just built one very close to mine, and before he built it, he went over and we had dinner, and he told me that he was gonna build it there. Out of his respect, he wasn't gonna come that close. I mean, he didn't need to do that, right? But, I mean, it's fine. I look at it now, I'm cooking and I see the farm. I mean, it's whatever. If he would have built closer, I mean, obviously, yes, the feet, he's closer to me. It's not gonna make this huge ass difference. I have gorgeous windows and I'm not gonna see the feet. That is true. But the original thought is that we went out there for space, for the prettiness of the nature and all that jazz. You know, that's why we left. Why I left the main Lake Jackson. I could have lived in, anywhere I wanted, to be honest. But it's so beautiful out there that I wanted to have that space. So, yeah, I wouldn't want it to get, closer to my neighbor. That's just my thought. I don't want to get into specs and feed, and I don't know shit about horses, to be honest. So that's all I have to say.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
What's your address, Mr. Cardenas?
32819 Average Ave.
32819 Average Ave.
Probably the smallest one out there.
Just for minutes. Thank you.
All righty. Okay.
So I'm Jesse Carroll, I live on 31819 Amberjack.
Yes, sir.
So I'm in favor. I mean, to me, it's this guy and Matt, I think y'all have said the greatest, smartest things I've heard all night long about the issues. So I agree with y'all's comments. I don't think it really matters. It's definitely on the build lines. And I moved out there, granted, yes, as an HOA, because you want to be able to have property and do things on your property and build the property. I think the POA wanted you to improve the property. That's the reason why they put it out there, right? So, so I'm for it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Yes, sir.
Jim Novak, 3026 Bowie View Court. Just wanted to say I'm in favor of changing the setbacks. Also, talk a little bit about drainage. I've been out there for roughly 10 years now. All the water I've seen, on my place, we've had some, like today, we've had some hell of a rains come through. Everything on my lot, it drains all to the front of the lot along the road. It can't go to the back because when they dug the back ditch, there's like a little knoll, so all the water flows to the front of the house. And any water that stays that's in the ditch from a big rain, it's gone within the next day. It's everything I've seen it drains real well, drains to the larger ditches and then on out to the settling pond or whatever. Yeah, drainage has not been a problem from what I've seen. I think when we moved out there, I heard it was designed a 500-year flood or whatever, and the drainage has been real good. So, yeah, I do have water that'll stand in the yard from time to time, but as far as the drainage out of the ditches, it never stays. So it drains real well. So, but like I said, I'm in favor of changing the setbacks.
Okay, thanks, sir. Okay. Yes, sir.
Jason Rumker, 33-211. I bought my house. It was built in 2010, so judging by the neighborhood and when it was designed and everything, when my house was built, it was probably one of the first few that were built. So I'm definitely in trouble, I guess, with flooding. I'm still agreeing with the setbacks. I want to see the setback get approved because I'm also a law-abiding citizen. I go to work every day. I bought my whole entire property. I want to be able to utilize my whole entire property. I grew up in the country, I was raised in the country, and I bought in the country for a reason. I want to be able to utilize my whole property. I'm not going to tell my neighbor what they can and can't do with their property. I want to see everything. And anybody who knows anything about dirt, and I've been around it all my life, dirt pad, yeah, we don't want to encroach that 7.5 foot, because that is our drainage. You don't want to block drainage. But that dirt pad right here in the middle of the property, on the edge of my property, it doesn't matter. Every load of dirt that goes onto a piece of property is dispersing water. So when they built my house in 2010 at whatever level, every dump truck bothers me because it's dispersing that much more water. But again, it doesn't matter where it's at on the property, as long as it doesn't fall in that 7.5 foot, it's still not going to affect my drainage, but it's still dispersing water. So I'm in favor for the setback.
Okay. All right. Yes, sir.
John Patterson, 2711 Oakwood Trail.
Yes, sir.
I'm at 100% changing the setback from 25 feet to 15 feet. I agree with this gentleman said earlier, there's no need in being destructive, enforcing people to tear down a building just to rebuild it 7.5 feet over. That is just uncalled for. That is ridiculous. And everybody in this room ought to be ashamed of themselves that they are telling these nice people to tear down a building and rebuild it 7.5 feet over. I mean, that's my personal opinion for this, and I'm 100% in favor for it.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson.
Thanks, sir.
I do have one thing to say.
Yes, ma'am.
33211 Amberjack. Personally, this doesn't have anything to do with the current barn. Maybe this started all of this, but I mean, we live in America, Texas, we change things, right? That's what y'all are here for, change. Something's not right, speak up and you change it. This has nothing to do with their barn. These people are not voting because of their barn. They're voting for their property. They're looking at what's best for them.
So you're for?
I'm sorry, yes, I am for it.
Just wanted to be clear.
What was your name?
Nicole Rumker.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay. All right.
I don't
Yes,
think
sir.
I described whether I was for or against.
We figured it out.
All righty.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay, yes, sir.
I didn't sign in, but I'm basically family. I live at 33 December, Bradford, and I'm for change.
Okay.
Setbacks to match the plat. I bought my property, my water source was on the plat, and I'm ordinance, so I had no idea.
Thanks, sir. All right. If there's no more,
I have some comments inside.
well, I'm going to go down the line.
Go ahead. Oh, yeah.
I'm going to go down the line, Mike.
Okay, I just listened to everything. Okay, so all the emails we received, that we've all received, and the public hearing that we had last, and this meeting that we've had, it's obvious that the community wants change for the people who showed up, and everybody got the same notification. Just tonight, it's 12 to 3. Okay. Property values, talk about, well, it's going to decrease my property value because they're encroaching upon my view, things like that. But I think it also, you have to consider that it increases your property value because now you have the ability to build all over what you have. A lot of talking about flooding. Anybody here flood during Harvey? Anybody here? So I'm the only one that flooded during Harvey, so I'm the only one that went through that. Right? My pool floods if it rains real hard, like I was thinking at work today. You know, I probably shouldn't have shocked the pool Sunday because sometimes the water does come in on it. So you get through it. You get through it. And another thing I was thinking there too, because I have an accessory building, and I do believe the contents of my accessory building were covered by flood insurance because I did have flood insurance. When I first came to council 4 years ago, we had a lot of variance requests, and Michael Coons was the city manager at that time. And I asked him about the variances. He said, "Hey, if you're tired of the variances, change the ordinances." And I think that we were headed this way before the Clintons built their barn. Okay, we've had committees on this. We've had lots of discussions on this. And just because I don't want anybody coming out here blaming the Clintons for this, we were headed this way. We were headed to a decision on it. Let's put it that way, okay? It's not a new thing, like somebody else said. It's not about the Clintons. It's about the ordinance and what people want. And this is Texas. We do change things if we see something right. And somebody said something about doing the due diligence during building. There are so many conflicting pieces of paper around here about what the setback is. You got the county, you got the plots, you got the city, you got the homeowners association. Hopefully, after whatever decision's made, we know what it is, and we can set it in stone and say this is where we are going forward. Because right now, you know, it's very unclear. It is a cluster, right? Those are my comments.
All right. Melissa?
So I like to do research. I like to look things up. I looked up what the R1 setbacks are compared to the R4. And in an R1 subdivision, about 7.5 foot setbacks, they're permitted to use about 45% of their property that they own. Once you look at the front, the back, and the sides. Oakwood Shores residents are able to use 65+% of their, and that is, let me clarify, that is the smallest lot in R1 compared to the smallest lot in Oakwood Shores. So it gets more from there, depending if you have 2 acres or whatever. You're able to use at least 20% more of your property. So you have 70,000 square feet to be able to decide where you want to put your stuff. And in 70,000 square feet, that's a lot of space. And I get it that maybe, you know, you don't want to put it in this exact place or something like that, but you have to be respectful to your neighbors. We all have to be respectful to our neighbors. That's why we are a city. We do all these events together as an HOA to gather our community, to rally everybody together. We have to be respectful to our neighbors. And what I keep hearing over and over again is, I want to build here. I want to build this here. I want to use my property. I want this. I want that. But the neighbors I hear from, the other side are, hey, I don't want to look at my view out of my bedroom window and see a barn. I don't want that wall to separate my view. I want to see the deer in the morning. I want to be able to look at all the fireflies. I didn't see fireflies since I was a kid. There are fireflies everywhere out there. Whenever you start building so close that your view is now obstructed, your neighbor's view, not yours, because most people are going to put it to the side of their house so that their view is perfect. Their view is amazing, but now they've taken from their neighbor. And that's what we have to look at. And I think that's why it's taking a long time and a lot of discussion over whether this is the right thing to do. Because yes, if I go and build my dream house and then my neighbor comes in and puts my big picture window, and then a neighbor puts in a barn right next to it and blocks my entire view, that is upsetting. And that is why people have the 25 feet of the setbacks. Because yes, our houses are all built in a row pretty much. But the accessory structures behind are the problem. But whenever you block your neighbor's view just because it won't block your view, you know, you have to think about others. You have to think about your neighbors. You have to think about what's best for the community as a whole, not just your own property. And that's the way I view it, and that's what I've seen, because that's the complaint that I hear. When people build too close, when people build things that block the neighbor's view. It's never the person who's building it that's complaining, because their view is perfect because they had the opportunity to put it exactly where they wanted it. But the neighbors had no say in that. So that's where I stand. You know, 25 feet gives plenty of green space behind, and it doesn't, it pushes it far enough away where it's not going to hurt your neighbor's view. And we have to be respectful to each other. That's where I'm out on it.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. Matt?
Yeah, so just a couple more comments from earlier. You know, brought up about the Clintons. I'll reiterate the same thing. It's not about the Clintons. Their case was the unfortunate case that highlighted we have a problem. Their case is what started a movement. I mean, I've been told in an email that I'm the council member that started a big movement and went and rallied a bunch of people together, and I can assure you that's wrong. I've talked to direct parties involved that have a direct case or a variance that came forward, and that's it. If I've talked to anybody else about opinions, it's been people that live in the city that have came to me, not me going and rallying, trying to change an ordinance. So a gap was brought up, in my opinion, when I looked at the case, when I looked at the facts of what the Clintons had. They did violate it. They've owned it. They did it out of order. Don't ever do it again. But when you really start looking at the 7 feet, moving this 7 feet over, destruction, tearing it down, pointless, in my opinion. Absolutely pointless. flooding. Yeah, we definitely have a flood issue in all of Richwood. Mike Johnson, he's the only one that, in this room that lived it. A lot of us saw it firsthand through neighbors, through family, whatever. But I think it's important to know that, just because it's the small population, the 40 or so that we've seen in person or that we've received emails from, by far, in the 90%, I'll say confidently, for this change. So what I've learned in my 3 years sitting on this bench is when the matters come up that people care about, they'll show up. And Oakwood Shores has done it time and time again. Quite frankly, roads, we weren't going to fund roads a few years ago. There were some issues with what was going to happen, what funds we were going to use, private or, interlocal agreement. Oakwood Shores showed up. They told us, they gave us a piece of their mind, and many other examples across the rest of the city as well. So, yes, we may only have a small percentage of the total population here, but everybody got the same notice out there. That's my comments.
Okay. Thank you. Rory?
Thank you, Mayor. Just quick comments on all the citizens' comments that were brought about today. First off, the vision and mission statements that were brought up earlier. I'm tickled to death to see this many people here, because normally it's an empty house. It's just Cliff, Trish, and that's it, and the police chief. And we knock out business, and that's how we do stuff. But speaking from Oakwood Shores' perspective, the vision that you mentioned, and like Matt hit it on, Oakwood Shores shows up in droves. Years ago, we had road issues. We had water issues. We have people right now on council that got on council to help improve our community, not only Oakwood Shores, but the city as a whole. We got a new city manager. We really cleaned it up. Our books are the best they've ever been. So the vision you were asking about, that was one of the big things we brought up. Oakwood Shores is the leading revenue gold mine for Richwood. We don't have retail like Lake Jackson. We don't have an industrial plant that gives us tax base. We crunched numbers and we showed the city manager, we showed staff, look, they're only 25% built out. If we were able to get them to 80%, how much tax revenue comes up? And it's a lot of money. And that not only benefits the city, it benefits everybody. Public services, infrastructure, everything that can better Richwood and actually make it Richwood. Because when I came to council, it wasn't rich, it was broke. And we're on that path to do better. So the mission was to improve tax base for the city of Richwood, to provide more public services, and I feel we've done that. Roads are getting fixed, water's getting fixed. There's been a big movement out there to build and grow. We see it all the time. A citizen brought up about variances. I mean, I just have to, I'm not going to ask each individually that y'all spoke, but how many does it directly affect right now that spoke up? Do you have a neighbor already to your left and your right? I mean, that's up to you to answer internally. But when this variance first came to our, I guess, to council, was because there was a break in ordinance. And I'm blown away by the last council meeting and to an HOA meeting that I went to, that people didn't know the whole story. They're like, wait, that barn's already built? I thought they were just putting in to get a building permit. No, the barn was already built. There was acknowledgement. You talk about rules and values and law-abiding citizens, or being a law-abiding citizen. It was put in an email. Yes, we will build at 25 feet. We will be a law-abiding citizen and do this. And it was built up not at 25 feet. Whether on accident, ill intent, I don't know. That's not for me to judge. I know it was called up. The direct impacted resident and neighbor brought the concern. It came to a variance. It was denied. There's now a big movement to change it. I think it's great. But you have to ask yourselves, how does it directly affect you? Do we make a quick knee-jerk reaction without doing impact studies and doing our due diligence to settle one instance? I mean, variances, great example. We grant variances all the time.
We've granted variances for sheds. We've granted variances for anything. But we always take in consideration the directly impacted resident, neighbor. Not the entire community, but the neighbor that's directly impacted. And that's kind of like where I stand on that point of it has a direct impact on the neighbor that brought this to the attention. Was there acknowledgement by the Clintons that, yes, we built out of spec? Yes, we acknowledged via email. So from a legal standpoint, we said we will build at 25 feet, and we did not. So from a legal standpoint, that's kind of hard to go back and say, hey, 7.5 feet, oops. But the variance process works, and it works when there's harmony. We spoke of harmony in the neighborhood, and we were going up and achieving harmony, getting roads fixed, getting water done, getting Wi-Fi brought and high-speed internet to the neighborhood. And it just really feels this movement has created so much division, but you have to ask ourselves for why. And I understand if the variance gets passed, you're now in compliance. You don't have to move your barn. But how does that affect more citizens down the road? Now they have to get a $2,000 lots form survey to build an accessory structure.
You already have to.
Not for an accessory structure.
I did.
Not for an accessory structure. For a building.
To build an accessory structure, you don't have to get a form survey?
No, sir.
No, when did you do it?
I did.
When?
2 months ago.
That's when it was changed.
That's when it was changed. So that's why you have to have a form survey now.
We changed it like 4 months ago.
It's brand new.
So that's what he's speaking on, is that his point is that because of this, we've added this.
Correct.
Yes, it's in all of the paperwork in order to get the permit.
Yes,
accessory
because of this, we've added
accessory
it.
structures used to not require that. It was done on a conditional building permit. The condition was 25 feet.
Or 7.5 or 15.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's why now you require. So any future resident now for any accessory structure now has to incur additional costs to ensure that that is placed at the right spot.
Are you saying thank
So-
us for that? Is that what you're getting at?
No, I'm saying
That's
that
kinda what it sounds like.
that this is the city had to do control measures. The city is doing control measures to ensure that we're not in this position again.
Because of the Clintons?
No,
That's kind of what I got at.
No.
Well, I think everybody, okay, just making sure.
Well, you can hear what you want, Mr. Clinton, but that's because
let's
of this.
keep
So
let's
I did, yeah, because we spoke earlier.
Let's keep it.
So also, and I'm seeing kind of tit for tat. So the 7.5 foot that everybody's advocating for the bayou lots was an ordinance that was proposed. Everybody's in favor of that. But there's a 25-foot ordinance for accessory buildings that nobody's in favor of it. So are you in favor of ordinances or not in favor of ordinances? Because I'm getting conflicting messages from the community, and I'm asking the question to y'all because the 7.5 bayou was an ordinance that was proposed variance
That was passed.
that was passed in 2008, which I agree. Hey, it was passed, but the ordinance that's been in place since 2008, there's an issue from. So I'm seeing it's kind of tit for tat. It's like you're picking when you want to choose and when we don't want to choose. So we just have to come to terms with it, be law-abiding, have rules and values, and if anything needs a variance, put a variance in beforehand, and talk to your neighbor like you said. Your neighbor came over, had dinner. Hey, I'm going to build my barn here. Let's have peace and harmony. Here we are having issues, and I feel it's a lot of work that we've done for this community for the betterment of the city of Richwood to gain tax revenue. That I've already heard residents say I'm not building out there. Man, they got drama. No, I'm done. I'll go build somewhere else. So
I don't think the drama is
so
city ordinances. What is
yeah.
Okay, folks. Let's move.
So
let's move
that's all I
it forward.
got. Thank y'all for your time.
Let's
see y'all next month.
move it forward and.
Can I make one comment? Just one quick comment?
Just one.
Just based on a variance. I was gonna put a variance in for something I want to do on my property. Variances cost us money too. I didn't know that until I put one in, but those get pretty expensive.
Yes. Okay. I appreciate everybody's comments. Appreciate council's comments. And number one, this is not an indictment of anyone. You got to remember when you are in a city and you vote in a council, the council members are here to listen to what the citizens say. If there's change that needs to be made, yes. In 2008, my wife was mayor at the time. And this is the first R4 that they ever had. So they worked very hard, but again, they worked with the developer, some outside sources, and they did what they thought was best for the city and the citizens at that time. And variances have been made over the years. Again, there's also been change in the ordinances over the years. That's what this is about. Number one, you write an ordinance. Every 3 years, we go through this same process with the state legislators. They write laws, and then they turn around 3 years later, they have to fix them because they didn't quite fit. Sometimes they don't quite fit. That's what we're here for. That's why we have the variances sometimes, because there are individual situations that may require a little adjustment, and when it's and the approval or disapproval is usually based on the people, the community around them, the complaints or the yeses and the nos. So what we're here tonight in this public hearing is not to indict anyone. I believe that we've all tried to explain from the council's view, and I've heard a lot of things that in the things that I've heard and listened to tonight, I've learned a lot. I've heard a lot that I didn't have. I'm very sorry that there's a divide out there. I'm very sorry that citizens were afraid to come, and if there's citizens afraid to come and speak their mind, because this is what this is for. Those that didn't choose to participate, we've made it well available to them by email. We've said come to the public hearings, and so we've tried to get it out there, and I believe we've done the due diligence. And that's why citizen input is so important. So tonight, what we're going to do is try to determine whether we have a decision to make now to determine what the final outcome is. And again, we've got a lot of information from y'all, from the previous public hearing, which I'm sorry I wasn't at, but I did watch the video twice to make sure that I listened to what everyone had to say. But when it comes down to it, we're going to do what's best for the citizens and what's best for, and we will listen. And what we've heard from the citizens that have come in and that have contacted us by email, and we're going to make it fair as best as possible and as democratic as possible. Again, it's just like elections. You've got the number of people. You've got this side running, you got that side running. Then you have to determine the views, and then you make your vote. And at the end, it's what the country wants. It's what the people want. So I believe that's all for the comments, unless council members, anybody else got anything? And I do appreciate every council member's input. It's been valuable, and it's been well thought out, and it presents different views and different issues that we'll all need to look at.
Can I ask a question? I noticed on here it's 10%. For both of them, it's 10% of the lot width not to exceed like 15 or 25 feet. So the cul-de-sac lots, they're only about 30 feet frontage. So does that mean they're gonna be able to build 3 feet from the property line?
You know, the lot width in the ordinance, the definition of the lot width is halfway between the front of the lot and the back of the lot. It goes from the middle.
From the middle? Okay. I just want to make sure everybody was understanding of that one because, yeah, 10% the front, and because the ordinance, the variance that was passed before, the one for the bayou lots, it specifically says in the ones that I was able to pull up that it's 100, it's only for the ones that are 100-foot frontage. And so, but I saw that a few of them, even there are 7.5, even though it's 2 acres, 3 acres. So I was just wanting to make sure that if we do this, we clarify it very, very clearly that it's middle, you know, or however we need to do that because.
Well, there's definitions.
Yeah, because these two definitely slip through the cracks as far as still being at a 7.5 foot.
So lot width is defined in the appendix B already as the horizontal distance between the side lot lines measured at right angles to the lot depth at any point midway between the front and rear lot lines. So it's clearly defined what lot width is. Lot frontage is a different definition.
Okay,
So lot frontage is not what's in ordinance, but lot frontage is the front of the lot shall be the boundary of the lot along the public street. So that's not what's in the ordinance.
Well, that's what's in the variance. So we just need, you know, so when we're making this, we need to make sure that
the variance is to grant a 7.5 foot setback for any Bastrop Bayou facing lot.
in this, it says,
I understand that, but we gotta go by minutes and the motion that was made in the minutes and approved.
Yeah.
That's how variances are
Well, that's why I'm
approved.
trying to say, if we do put something, we need to make sure it's very, very clear because the discrepancy between what's here and what was said on the minutes, and we don't have any proof of what was in the minutes. We don't have any documentation as far as what was submitted.
Yeah, just like anything
Yeah.
else, we have to go based on the motion and the approval.
Yeah, so the motion needs to be very clear if we.
Okay, council members, is there any further discussion, or do we want?
I have questions on Councilmember Strawn's recommendation in the meeting minutes. The front 150 feet removed completely and the depth 200 feet removed completely. So will we no longer have a minimum frontage? Would that affect anybody trying to replat?
No, this would fix is
We have frontage that are only 30 feet.
Right.
And
Those
so that
cul-de-sac
doesn't, yeah,
type
those
lots.
cul-de-sac,
Right, so
and
this just
all
removes-
and practically all the bayou lots are only 100 feet.
Right.
So that was incorrect to
That's where
start
that,
with.
that's why it was originally set at 10% not to exceed 15 feet for the main structures, assuming that all lots were 150 feet.
Okay.
Right, and they weren't.
And they're not. So removing this just removes the requirement of length and depth, but still requires them to at least be 1 acre. So
Yes.
however they get that acre.
I'm glad you brought that up, because
Yeah.
that was the one thing that I noticed that was off, just because some of them are definitely not 150.
Yeah, I think regardless of what side someone's
As
on,
long as
that
they're
needs
at
to
least
come
an
out.
acre,
No.
right, exactly.
I personally like Councilmember Johnson's amendment that he submitted, should be in the package.
Let me put it up.
Minimum building setbacks are as follows. Side 7.5 feet for lots along Bastrop Bayou, and 10% of the lot width not to exceed 15 feet for all other lots. And if this is a question, but that should match all plots or plats that are received from the county from this point forward.
While taking into account the variance that was granted in 2008.
Now, plats are living documents, correct? I mean, that's why we changed to BFE for an ordinance.
Right.
Residents combine lots. The
That's where
master
much of the
plat, the
confusion
master
comes.
plat's not updated
Right.
for every
They don't get
change.
updated every time we make a
So
change.
that's where,
But
yes,
I'm sorry.
it says 15 feet on there, but as a living document with ordinances and combinations of lots, the county and the city is not going to go update the master plat every time there's a change. Our budget would be broke.
Right, but when a potential buyer goes to buy a lot, it would be updated, and they would know. I'm
They
not on
get
the
their
Bayou,
individual
I have
lot survey.
15 foot.
Their individual lot survey. Not the master plat.
So are we comfortable with 7.5 feet for all lots on Bastrop Bayou? I think that's what I was bringing up, because the variance, the original one requested only for the ones that were 100 feet, because there are 2 acre, 3 acre, should they also be at the 7.5-foot side setback when they have,
And most of those are done through replat that we have done,
but there are a few that are,
just that way.
yeah, just that way. They're just built at 2 acres and 2.5 acres. So do we want to clarify for only the 1 acre lots? There are 2 at least that are 2 acres already that weren't replatted were 2 acres, because they,
Cul-de-sac lots
yes.
on the bayou. I thought you had meant there's
Oh,
cul-de-sac lots.
cul-de-sac
on
lots
the
just
bayou.
in general,
Oh, okay.
yeah. And throughout the subdivision, because they're 30,
Yeah, no, I know there's some on there, but I didn't know, so those wouldn't be affected by 7.5 feet anyway, right?
No, it wouldn't matter.
And these are, we're talking about accessory building setbacks, not changing
No, that's building setbacks. No, that's building setbacks.
Yeah, we're talking to match them.
Yeah,
Trying to match them.
to match
Yeah, that's
them to-
matching home and accessory.
Because
which-
right now, the ordinance reads 10% not to exceed 25 feet, but we already only build at 15 feet set, either 15 or 7.5, so we weren't even following this to start with,
I understand. Thank you
so.
for the clarification.
Any other comments, questions, or recommendations?
Yeah, I originally submitted a proposal for the amendment, of the 7.5 feet Bass Strip Bayou, 10% of lot width, keeping our current ordinance, because you have lots that are 300 feet long, you have lots that are 100 feet long. Keeping it proportioned by a percentage makes stuff more centered. Now, I know it's not our job to be in aesthetics, that's the HOA's responsibility, but from a perspective of 7.5 feet on a 3 acre lot, you have a lopsided house. Versus if you have a percentage, you're now a little bit more centered. Just my opinion, initially when I submitted that amendment, but from hearing this, I feel the variance avenue has worked for our community time and time again, and for the city. And it takes, the directly impacted residents' concerns at hand. So that's kind of where I stand.
Right?
Well, I appreciate where Councilman Rory stands on that, and I just want to give my thoughts about variances. Is that we do pool all the neighbors, and as long as it's favorable, I will vote in favor of a variance. If there's one against, I vote against it. But we're not talking about variances here. We're talking about changing the ordinance.
Right.
And so, what I'm going by is the majority of the people who have showed up, the majority of people who have emailed, and the majority of the people that attended the public hearing are for a change.
All right.
And I represent the people, all the people.
Exactly.
That's why you should be up there, right?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, is there any?
So, I'll make a motion to approve Councilmember Johnson's amendment in the package to read, what is this, ordinance B, section E2 would be changed to say side 7.5 feet for lots along Bastrop Bayou and 10% of lot width not to exceed 15 feet for all other lots. Bullet point II would change to say side 7.5 feet for lots along Bastrop Bayou and 10% of lot width not to exceed 15 feet for all other lots. And those are the changes.
Okay.
Sorry, I need to continue.
Okay.
And I would lump in Councilmember Strong's amendments to strike section D, number 1 and 2, regarding the frontage and depth.
Okay, we have a motion on the table by Councilmember Yarborough. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. A second made by Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Johnson, how do you vote, sir?
Aye.
Councilmember Strong, how do you vote, ma'am?
No.
Councilmember Yarborough, how do you vote, sir?
Aye.
Councilmember Escalante, how do you vote, sir?
Nay.
Okay. So we have a 2-2 tie, which is going to put me in the position to have to vote again on this situation. And in keeping with the will of the people, I will vote aye. Let the record reflect that the motion has carried by a vote of 3-2. 3 yeas and 2 nays. All right. Let's take about a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and get to the next item.
privately. Turn your water.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen. We have adjourned from the public hearing, and now we're back in regular session. Going to discussion and action items. Strand task order amendment. Clifton.
Yes, sir. So, council, we're aware that the North Water Plant has gone past its estimated date of substantial completion. This proposed task order from Strand is to allow Strand to stay here, present in the project, mainly for RPR services through the duration of the project, to ensure that we keep our oversight in place and quality control and everything else. I wanted, Ryan Tinsley came from Strand to kind of walk you through the whole thing, give you a comprehensive understanding of what it's all about, where we started, where we're at, where we're going. So I'm going to let him speak on this.
Thank you.
Thank you
for coming, Ryan.
Glad to be here. I was telling Cliff, it's nice to see government working the way it should, and it's good to see so many people show up and voice different opinions, and you all had some really great opinions that you shared as well, and convinced me back and forth several times on that last action. It's a tough one to follow. But yes, so Cliff has included, I think, in the council packet, some language that I'd written up in an email to him and Eric regarding an amendment request for Strand to be able to continue providing construction phase services for the North Water Plant project, and some different things that we've tried to do throughout that project to save the city money. I think it's important to note that Strand is providing services on this project on an hourly rate basis, so the city is only paying for the services that Strand is providing. It's not a lump sum contract, and based on last year, I think it was last summer of 21, when we were discussing amendment number 2, I believe it was, we thought that this project would be completed by September 1st of 2022. And due to issues with supply chain, construction material shortages, that has had to be extended out. Shortly after that amendment was approved, we did add a little bit of extra time in anticipation that construction equipment, mainly the electrical equipment, would take a little bit longer to get to us based on what we were seeing on other similar projects. So we built that into the schedule, and we had thought that the project would be complete in October, November of this year. Again, we've stretched our budget about as much as we can, and unfortunately about a month from that electrical equipment being delivered to the job site, the contractor was notified that instead of it showing up in October, it's now scheduled to show up next spring. And I think that's something that is well outside of anybody's realm of control. Unfortunately, it's becoming par for the course on construction projects that generators are just taking longer to be delivered, electrical switchgear is taking longer to be manufactured and delivered. And so I've worked with Cliff to kind of figure out what we could do to finish this project out. Fortunately, we do have a great contractor out there. They have stayed pretty hard and concentrated on getting this project as far along as they could, minus these outstanding items. And so we're expecting that everything except for the electrical work will be done by Christmas. And fortunately, that will allow us to, for all intents and purposes, just pull off of the job site for a number of months until that electrical equipment shows up. And then once it does, we'll be back on. We'll be assisting with the startup, with the closeout documentation, working with TCEQ to get everything submitted to them so that they're comfortable with putting this well into service, and then we'll have a fully functioning North Water Plant. So with that, I have pulled together a request, and I've kind of broke it down by month, what the anticipated billings are going to be. Of course, that could change based on schedules, but this is my best guess based on where we stand today. And that totals $48,000 to essentially add 1 year to the construction administration services. And I am available to answer any questions you may have.
I have a question for Cliff. When we do projects like this, do we put in a contingency?
Yes, sir, we do.
What's that amount, like 10%?
I want to say the contingency on this project was 15.
Generally, I like to start out at the beginning of the project with a 20% contingency. Once we get into the bidding phase, I like to lower that down to 10 or even a 5%. Some of that accounts for issues like this, continuation of services. Some of them, it's unforeseen change orders.
So we've already used up all the contingency?
No, we have not exceeded the max budget yet. So everything, we set $4 million for the project.
This will put us right at budget.
Put us right at budget.
So we're still under budget and
Yeah.
we're asking for this? I was just curious.
Because their contract was on the 3rd.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, it's a change to the original task.
So we're still on budget.
We've explored both options here. When you have a contract extension such as this, you have, as us who let the project, we have the option to ask for liquid damages. And those damages are costs that we incur beyond the scope of the project. The problem that we have, and we are going to see moving forward, and anybody that does contracts knows this right now, you have a force majeure issue. So if we go the liquid damages route, we're already at budget. Then the contractor says, well, it's a force majeure issue, and we battle that out in court. Then we're over budget no matter what happens. So at the end of the day, we consulted with Strand, we talked with Philip, and there's really no way around this. This is a project that can't go without RPR services. We do not have the technical capability to get this well up and running on our own and do the compliance issues with TCEQ and the engineering requirements and all of that.
I'm good with that.
If this were a simpler project, we might could do that. But
no, I was just asking if we were on budget and if we've used our contingency. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah.
And we're on budget, right?
It will take us right to the line. We should be right at $4 million.
So we're not over budget yet?
Yeah.
We don't plan on being over budget?
No.
Okay, that was my question.
Force majeure, we don't know.
I understand.
Yeah. So we're not gonna get the whip out yet.
Inshallah.
We've got all the materials ordered. We've got all the materials ordered, so now it's just manpower.
Yeah, like I said, the materials were supposed to be delivered last month, and that
But there's not
delivery
gonna be a
date
price gouge because of materials.
because it's already been ordered. I do not expect it.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
Is there any change in labor prices or contract for, when they go sit for 3 months or go, demobilize from this job to another job and kind of remob? I know just mob and demob incurs its own
answer
cost.
all that in one shot if I can, Matt. I'm going to do my best. Right now, in this climate, we don't know. The contractor we have now has not alluded to that in any way, shape, or form. Matter of fact, they try to take every step to make sure they keep their people on site, to do as much work as they can, to process their payments, and when they're totally caught up, then they'll abandon it. I guess they probably could have done that weeks or months ago and said, well, we're kind of just beating our heads against a brick wall here.
So they're milking it out with some intentional effort at this point.
Absolutely.
Okay.
They are. Like Ryan said, I feel the contractor is a good contractor, and they have not alluded to that. Now, this is the last contractor that we're working with, or the last contract under the 4-contract umbrella. The only thing that has to be done after this is going to be the startup for the well and the disinfection of the tank. So it's nothing in depth, not like with the booster pump station. Regarding that, I have contacted W.W. Payton, spoken with Brian Payton even about the liquidated damages. The suggestions he gave to me is if we need to, he wants to assist to get the plant up running sooner. But that's the best he can do. So he does not, I don't get any impression that he's looking to raise the costs in any way, shape, or form, or has any reason to at this point. But we cannot speak.
Yeah, I mean,
for the dates we're
yeah,
given.
no.
As of now, it's our best guess from the.
Yeah. I just worry about the 3 months of he's got to go put his crews to other work, you know, and
Source of my nightmare.
to get them back is, you know, is that going to cost us more? But like I said, we don't know.
So now that the new driveway is up and running, are y'all planning to remove the temporary driveway, or is that one going to stay there, the one that's off of the Blue Crab?
Now there's some dress up work that's going to be done over there.
Okay, I was going to say, it looked like it still needed a little bit of work, and I was going to
Oh, yeah.
say, before we let those people leave.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Can we-
we just, to be honest, I think we're trying to stay away from the site right now. The fence is up, it's a little bit different now.
Mhm.
But
Right.
we didn't want to encroach over there with any kind of equipment at this time. But yeah, it needs some work, some seed.
I noticed some drainage, the drainage was a little bit, with all the rain and stuff, it was a little
Sure.
backed up, just because all the extra dirt and so I wasn't sure if that was something they were going to address, or is that something the city needs? Is that part of their contract to
Well,
clean up the site, or?
They actually seeded parts of it, I believe, where they pulled off the pads. They seeded all that and done some dozer work. We've gone through there, picked up a lot because they obliterated the pads that they laid down due to the condition of the ground.
Right.
So that's all been picked up. There's probably a little bit more work needs to be done, and that will be us.
Okay.
Quick question, Ryan. Amendment number 1 and number 2, do you know the values of those? I know obviously number 3 is 48,000.
Unfortunately, I do not have that number in front of me.
Okay.
I can get that to you though.
Yeah. I'm just trying to capture, how much, this has gone over. And I know you're saying we're at budget, right at the line. But, initially the city incurred an additional $80,000 because of the whole.
It was steel, wasn't it?
The steel price, but when it was announced on the public record notification, that was kind of dropped. The ball was dropped by the fax, and it had to get rebid. And by that time, costs had gone up. So we took an $80,000 hit on the chin. $48,000 here for amendment number 3. I'd like to get the value of amendment number 2 and number 1 to kind of just have a holistic picture of how much we're talking here. It has to be done. I get it, but
The thing I would like to mention too is the $4 million was the budget, but we also have around $85,000 of interest income that we've taken in on that money since it's been invested, waiting to be spent. So that is additional money in the fund if for any reason we would go.
And then kind of the caveat on what Matt was saying, does this contractor, if we're going to delay, have we asked them about any inflationary costs that they're going to, give to us? Because everything's going up, in a couple months, are we going to see amendment number 4? Hey, the contractor is giving us a 10% inflationary cost for the next 3 months. Just something to throw out to them to say, hey, we're locking in, or do a firm fixed price right now, and put the verbiage in there that the inflationary costs, I know force majeure is going to supersede that, but
I think one of the things that we've done to kind of keep the pressure on this particular contractor, I mentioned that they've been doing a great job in trying to get it done as quickly and as efficiently as possible, at least what they can. We have actually not moved their end date. Their substantial completion end date is still last month. Final completion was this month. I think that can certainly be worked into any conversation that would remove the possibility of liquidated damages. If we move their end dates to some point in the future, maybe to align with their current schedule for completion, it would need to be worked into that conversation as well, that they're not going to hit us up for any change orders. I don't expect them to, because they've already ordered all the materials. It's just a matter of getting them on site.
Well, I think it could be a productive conversation.
Yeah, just to cover our bases.
Nobody wants to go to court.
No.
It's devastating for everybody. I think it'd be a productive conversation, and I can definitely have it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right.
So 48 puts us right at the line, and then there's an 80-ish in interest that, for change order number
It's
4.
not earmarked for anything specific, but needs to be spent on.
It's gotta go to a water sewer project.
Okay.
I was gonna say, don't say number 4.
Right?
I'm just,
Put that out there.
if it comes.
It's just, it's not like we are at maximum.
I'd like to make a motion to approve amendment number 3 to Strand Associates task order in the amount of $48,000 for the North Water Plant project.
Okay, I have a motion made by Councilmember Johnson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Councilmember Yarborough. Councilmember Johnson, how do you vote, sir?
Aye.
Councilmember Strawn, how do you vote, ma'am?
Aye.
Councilmember Yarborough, how do you vote, sir?
Aye.
Councilmember Escalante, how do you vote, sir?
Aye.
Okay, let the record reflect that the motion was passed unanimously.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
I'll try to
Thank
get
you.
that in the weekly report.
Okay, 1 and 2.
Amendment, yes.
I appreciate it, and appreciate the opportunity to serve the city of Richwood. Look forward to get this water plant finished for you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Good to
We
see you again,
appreciate
sir.
all y'all been
Appreciate it.
doing, Ryan. Okay, moving on. Discuss and consider accepting bid from Felder Waterworks in the amount of $23,000 to plug water well number 1.
Okay, so this is a quick backstory. Water well number 1 we had to stop using. There's a tear in the screen. It's pulling sand. In 2018, we began to put massive amounts of sand into distribution. Once we realized the problem, we discontinued use of the well. Decided to keep it operational just in case the worst emergencies would be realized that we lost all of the other water producing infrastructure. And also wanted to get the well finished at the North Water Plant. Even though the well's not finished, we have been exercising the well. Leaving that water stagnant is never good. So even though we're not using it, we block the valve off and we dump water onto the ground to move that water out of the aquifer. Doing that, I feel, is probably, based on what we're seeing, the discharge, that the tear is worsened to the point that we couldn't even consider using it in an emergency situation. We have it budgeted. We had it in the budget this year. We earmarked $40,000 for it. We had one respondent, which was Felder Waterworks, to the advertisement requesting bids. And that's the bid amount you have before you.
So it's coming in under budget?
Yes.
So we have 40,
Is there an undo of this and repair if that's ever the feasible? That doesn't sound like that would ever be a feasible option.
No, we looked into it. One of the challenges we're facing is the well is 40 years old. It's called well number 2. It's technically well number 1. Well number 2 has already been drilled and plugged because it was problematic. This has been a great well, but to redo that screen and possibly get into casing, you're probably looking at 60 to 70% the cost of a new well for a 40-year-old well. And not to say it wouldn't last another 20 years, I don't know, but it's just kind of remiss at this point.
Yeah.
If it was 15 years ago, maybe, but now it just seems to be.
How deep is it?
It's about 300, it pulls at about 320 feet, I believe, 340 feet.
Have you thought about doing a casing inspection on it?
We already have.
And it's deteriorated?
There is some pitting. I wouldn't say it's fully deteriorated, but there is some pitting. Yeah, it's not my biggest concern that the casing would be bad, but it is still 60 to 70% the cost of a new well to change that screen. Yeah, the casing would be even worse. It would be over the cost of a new well.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
That's what I was getting at.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions, comments?
All right, make a motion to accept a bid from Felder Waterworks in the amount of $23,000 to plug water well number 1.
Okay, I have a motion made by Councilmember Yarborough. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Have a second by Councilmember Escalante. Councilmember Johnson, how do you vote, sir?
Aye.
Councilmember Strawn, how do you vote, ma'am?
Aye.
Councilmember Yarborough, how do you vote, sir?
Aye.
And Councilmember Escalante, how do you vote, sir?
Aye.
Okay, let the record reflect that the motion is carried unanimously. Okay, item C, BWA usage memo, or discussion regarding water usage from Brazosport Water Authority.
Wanted to have the opportunity to come to council, to talk to council about this issue. I might have brought it up in a weekly update, but I was visited by the administrative staff of BWA, Ronnie Woodruff and Wyatt Ringgold, and they wanted to come talk to me before they made a move to ratchet up our take-or-pay contract. Because of the overusage of BWA, we're using on average about 78,000 gallons more a month than our maximum. We do have a better understanding now of the overusage and why. I included a little bit of that in the report. There's a secondary system that was put in at the South Water Plant to a redundancy to try to save from any kind of failure realized from a fault in the SCADA system. And that works off of distribution pressure alone. So it's not tied into the regular pressure sensors that are sensing what the towers hold. It's what's in distribution pressure at that point in distribution, and that's what dictates whether or not the site comes on and runs or not. Due to that, we do see increased run time. At this point in time, I would rather not remove it. It's the only redundancy that I have in the system. We only have 2 pieces of water producing infrastructure connected to SCADA at this time. All goes well and fingers crossed and we get done with this North Water Plant, we will then have 3 pieces of infrastructure in rotation and we can take a closer look at it. We're also putting the 2 wells down at that location. They're considered in service, but we do not use the water. We're also looking at options to utilize those 2 wells more to fill that tank instead of BWA's treated surface water for that tank. So we're going to see some overages for a few months, but instead in a knee-jerk reaction and putting another well on SCADA, and then we have 4, 5 different water-producing infrastructure, and we might start using 75,000 gallons but paying for 235. So it could be bad either way you slice it. It happens a little bit. We're towing the line as close as we can and doing the best we can to keep up with it. And this is kind of where we're at this time. If council has any suggestions or any questions, but my position right now is to keep it as is, understanding the overage will be there, and as soon as we can get a grip on it with the production of the new well, we will do so.
Cliff, just for edification, roughly how long of a period of time will you need once we get North Water Plant up and running for data gathering before we can make an assessment on that?
I think we'll have some data within a week. We can see the difference between the run times of our booster pumps to well number 5, which is on SCADA. Once we get it in rotation, and we're sure that it's in rotation, we'll be getting data within the first 24 to 48 hours.
So we're talking July, August?
Yeah, I would say within good data within the first couple of weeks of the plant being online.
And what's BWA's standing on based on our situation?
They have accommodated us and they have agreed not to do what's within their contract to be able to do. They will hold off, and I've got to about July.
They understand that timeline, I'm sure.
They do. And if it happens, we can make a modification to the implement we put at the South Water Plant. It's just your apartment, 3rd-story apartments are going to suffer. It's already hard enough.
They've done that for other cities. I know they did when I was on the board and as president, so.
Yeah, it's, unfortunately, we found out the other night because we lost a alternator soon to a power surge, but it is tied into the alternator. I was under the impression that it was totally autonomous from the SCADA, which was incorrect. But it is tied to the alternator, but it's a secondary system in the case of failure.
Well, that's good as long as, you know, I think it, you know, I know that Richwood's been very good about trying to maintain our usage, and each city, I know 10 years I was on the board, each of the cities have had problems. And as member cities, the BWA has been very helpful. And I would hope that they would have been helpful with us at this time, because this is our time. And like I said, we haven't had that many problems over the years.
That's a bit of a double whammy, you know, the price increase this year. So we're facing that and an overage. We do have extra budgeted, and we hope to definitely stay under that budget, but we do have to push till June, July, possibly August, when we can get substantial completion done with the water. And we're utilizing our wells as much as we can. We're letting 5 run on automatic. We're running it 2 other days a week, and the other well 1 other day a week. And we push the system to overflow, and we're still using more BWA water.
So say the purse strings get tight at BWA and they want to speed up the timeline, the agreement a little bit. The financial impact, can we absorb that from, how many months can we absorb that until the North Water Plant, that July, August timeframe? You know, or else we're talking about going, you know, for additional, raising rates again, correct? I mean, if this public works budget doesn't.
If we end up taking more BWA water, at this point in time, I got no reason to believe that would happen under this situation.
Okay.
Even if we were over a bit, we do have fund balance in the enterprise fund. As of right now, based on the numbers I see, I don't anticipate getting there. But he is giving me an average. Any kind of hard month, we get into the dog days of summer into June and July, and we see the same thing that happened this year. It's kind of.
Do you think any of that had to do with like busted water lines and things like that, the loss of water there? Or, I mean, a small amount, but
yes, some.
So during the winter months, hopefully we won't have as much unless we have another crazy freeze or something.
Hopefully with the rain, the ground has moved back. If we start getting dry again, but, you know, we have 30 main leaks that we've done. But
I was going to say, y'all have been so busy trying to fix all the main leaks that I wonder if that has something, a little bit to do with it. So hopefully, now that those have been fixed, we can stabilize a little bit.
Hopefully.
Okay. Any other questions?
We don't need anything there, correct?
Yeah.
There's no action.
No, it's just a discussion.
Thank you for all the work you've done trying to make sure and keep up with it.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, then also in item D, or under item D, we're looking at discussion and possible action in authorizing the city manager to submit grant application for the 2022 Hazard Mitigation Grant Program post-fire grant.
Mayor, Council, marrying up with our consistent search for redundant programs, we have the opportunity to submit for the HMGP post-fire grant. Please don't let the name fool you. It's basically been reduced down now to hazardous mitigation, which projects we've identified go along with our topic of redundancy in water. Well number 6 needs a generator. It's $109,000. Generator for lift station number 4, $85,000. Generator for lift station for number 3, $105,000. 20% for inflation CPI, 5% management, 15% engineering, 5% RPR. Brings us a total of $448,500. Richwood would be responsible. It's a 75-25 grant. $112,125 would be the match from ours. We do have that available in fund balance if we take part of that money we had set back for the roads, which we said at the beginning of the year, that's could be utilized for that because it's not out of it's out of fund balance, general fund. So that would still leave us, what do we say? 450, 460 for any road work that we wanted to do. I don't have a real good feel for this grant. I'll be writing this one myself. It's only been, I think, 2 or 3 have been given out so far, but I think it's worthy of making a shot. Cliff came up with this. This is his wish list here, and I agree wholeheartedly. We need well number 6 on a well as soon as possible, or on a generator as soon as possible. Lift station 3 or 4 are problematic as is. We get any rainfall or any I&I, they're both at capacity. That won't help with that, but it keeps those lines clear as long as possible without manual generation. This would leave us 2 lift stations left without generators, or 3? 3. It would leave us 3 without generators, which we hope to get further on. But we do have 2 portable generators on staff now that we can keep those up and running. So all in all, again, it looks like a match for us would be 112, 125 for a $448,000 project that's identified now. We got 2 choices. We can go with what we've looked at. We have the cost estimates on that now. They're pretty firm. But again, keep in mind these are generators and switchgear, which are problematic at best right now. We did put a 20% contingency in there. We could reduce the amount, go to just one generator, 2 generators, or all 3. I just don't have a good feel on the availability of this project, but I would like to try if we could. I think it's worth a shot.
The scope council was not something just made up. It was taken from the ARPA. We had to reduce the ARPA scope. So this is just bringing those items back from the ARPA.
Does this require a motion or a blessing?
Motion.
I think I make a motion to authorize the city manager to submit grant application for 2022 Hazard Mitigation Grant Program HMGP Post-Fire Grant. Yes, and please write more.
Okay. Yes. I have a motion and made by Councilmember Johnson, seconded by Councilmember Yarborough. Councilmember Johnson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Strawn, how do you vote, ma'am?
Aye.
Councilmember Yarborough, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Escalante, how do you vote, sir?
Aye.
Okay, let the record reflect that the motion is carried. Okay. Discussion regarding compatibility of city council members concurrently serving on homeowner association boards. We have a memo here that's has come into that, so I guess I'll let you or
Mayor, Council, we were asked by Councilmember Escalante to clear up the discussion regarding compatibility with city council members concurrently serving on homeowner association boards. We met with council. Council's agreed. It is not a violation of any type right now. It is within our charter and within our bounds for Councilmember Escalante to do this. And we do have a letter from the city attorney on this. So I would gladly entertain any questions.
I just have one comment I was asked to make from a neighbor that's not going to be here. Leslie Kluge, 105 Hummingbird Court. Bob Page asked me to comment and say that if a council member serves on an HOA, shouldn't they recuse themselves from any votes that may affect the HMO and its members for the good or bad? And he said he's not saying that he should not voice their thoughts with disclaimers that they have a personal interest in the outcome, just that they should recuse when it comes to introducing, seconding, or voting.
Sure, and we broached this subject several months ago, and I believe it was very clear that the answer that was given us by legal was, unless it directly affects their property value or impacts their property, then the vote is fine. And I would say in his particular case, it would be something that has to do with his property, not something in the bounds of Oakwood Shores proper. Even though we have argued, or that people have argued, anything he does at Oakwood Shores impacts his value. Well, so does it anybody who lives or works as a council member here. Anything you do affects your property values as a city as a whole. So I think there were, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're hitting it right on the nail. You know, it's clear within the ordinance. I looked at Attorney General opinions, nothing, and it's pretty clear that yeah, you have to own property, but you have to have in order for there to be a conflict, there has to be a special economic effect on the value of the real property that's distinguishable from its effect on the public. So if he was in violation and was doing some kind of a voting on some kind of ordinance change that directly affected him because he was in violation, there's a conflict there. But in a situation where you know, it affects the public as a whole, there's no conflict. They're two different. One doesn't govern the other. They're two separate, different governing type bodies. So there's just no conflict there.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
William Yerson. I know this stems from the comment that I made a couple months ago, and I would like to clarify. I've had this conversation with Mr. Escalante before, along with the city attorney before. I understand that there is no conflict by the paperwork, but just because something is legal, just because you can do something, doesn't mean it is right to do it. You know, like it was said, you know, it's in the charter, and it is. I have the paperwork right here. I printed it out. It says what he's doing is perfectly fine. But just because that paper says it's fine and that he can do it doesn't mean it is fine. I've heard from several residents that have called me. I've spoke to several people. You know, the concern is, you know, what the city attorney said a while ago, you know, they're two separate entities. They don't, you know, they don't work with each other. I mean, they work with each other, but it doesn't, he makes his decisions over there and has his decisions over here. But not questioning your integrity, I'm putting that out there. There are individuals who, you know, they sit here and they make this decision with the homeowners association and they say, you know, we're not going to allow this. You know, this isn't going to happen. We don't want this to be in our neighborhood. And then that individual has that right to go to the city and ask for a variance or this or that, you know, comes over here, you know, and then how do you separate the two? You've already had to address that over here. How do you bring it back over here to this side and say, you know what, I'm putting on a different hat? You know, and it's a very, very, very difficult thing to do. And all I'm saying is, you know, like it was said, you know, it's in the charter, it's covered the whole 9 yards. You know, the council asks for things to be looked at in the charter again and reviewed. I mean, right now there's a charter review going on. You know, as a resident, you know, where do we come in where we can say, hey, look, I feel as a resident this needs to be on the charter review. You know, just because you can do something, just because it's legal, doesn't mean it's right. You know, it's legal for me to be up until 10 o'clock at night working on property in my yard, banging hammers, cutting saws, doesn't make it right.
Charter review is also open to public and comments.
Is it?
Yes,
Yes.
and those
So-
agendas are posted just like this.
Okay, so that's my thought on it, and it's not questioning you specifically. You know, like Ms. Strawn, her husband's on the HOA, and I've made the same comments, vice versa. You know, I think there needs to be a separation. You can't sit here and be on CCPD. You know, Matt can't sit here and be on council and be on Keep Richwood Beautiful. I think the homeowners association falls very, very finely into that. Because of the fact you can sit on both and you still can influence both if you wanted to take that route. So that's all I was saying about it. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other discussion?
I'd make just a couple of comments. The duty when doing this falls on that person serving on multiple boards or multiple, you know, councils, whatever. Just like in the fire department, there have been issues that have come forward. I mean, what's different? I mean, real property value, we're talking about, you know, we vote to approve large amounts of money for fire department. So it doesn't always look right, And in a perfect world, I would hope that we wouldn't have anybody serving on multiple boards, just like the charter review we just approved. How many of those members are directly tied to another board, or a family member, a direct household family member is tied? A lot of them. It's not pretty, but it's the volunteers that we had. So we can't get mad at the volunteers that we have for stepping up on multiple areas of the city. But, I mean, that's my, but I say it falls back to the duty of the person to make sure on specific agenda items they recuse themselves if necessary. So,
Can I answer that?
yes.
So I agree 100% with what you're saying. You do that, and you deal with the fire department. But the fire department does not deal with an entire neighborhood's living conditions and what the residents have to go through. What y'all do is amazing. What the CCPD does is amazing. What KRB does is amazing. All those separate entities, you're doing it as a city as a whole, to make things safer and better for everybody. You're not specifically that one neighborhood where it could potentially be, misconstrued that way. So I do agree with you 100%. I'm not questioning that. I'm just saying in that aspect, when certain residents start feeling like, hey, I'm on this side of the fence, I'm on the outs with them, so I can't get anything approved. Well, let me go to council. No, I got to face the council again. I'm still not going to get it approved. That's the scenario and the situation that's been brought to me that made me stand up and say, hey, maybe we should look at this. And just because it's legal doesn't mean it's right. And I hope that clarifies my stance.
Yep. No, and I would say it's not best practice. It's not ideal. I would hope we would have enough volunteers different that no one is, serving on multiple. But I just don't think that's reality, unfortunately. So that's when the duty falls back on that person.
Just one quick comment. One of the requirements to be on council is to live in the city of Richwood. So, you have to live in the city of Richwood, whether you live in Oakwood Shores, Audubon Woods, or any other neighborhood. You reside in that community that you're on. So, this is legally verbatim from TML. There's no state law prohibiting a city council from serving on a HOA board, so it should not cause a problem. There are prohibitions on holding more than one public office, but service on a HOA board is not a public office, so there would be no dual office holding or incompatibility problem. Additionally, to help answer your question about, owning property, it's a local government code section 171.001 .010 that states local public officials' conflict of interest and prohibits a local public official from voting on a particular or participating in a matter involving a business entity of real property in which the official has a substantial interest. And that's what I think Philip alluded to, substantial interest. Even before I took office, substantial interest would be like, all right, if I own 85 lots in Oakwood Shores, that's a substantial interest. As a homeowner that owns one property, that is not a substantial interest for the whole community. Now, if I own a large amount of lots, if I'm a developer, yeah, that's a substantial interest. So I can see where that could kind of be construed and not look good, but, a substantial interest versus I'm a resident of Richwood. I have to live somewhere. I live in Oakwood Shores. I volunteer my time to be on the HOA. I volunteer my time to be on here, just like all of us. So, I appreciate the concern. I just hope more residents could step up and volunteer their time for, charter review committees, city councils, HOA boards, anything that betters your community. I applaud you and go for it. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Okay.
I've got one thing.
Yes, sir.
As the new neighborhoods come in, they are required to have HOAs too. And so there's probability that we'll have other people on council that are members of the HOA and vote or run. I know you ran before, but use your power of your vote.
Okay. All right. Next item. Discuss and consider Resolution 22R71, amending the FY 2022 budget to allow for unbudgeted expenditures during the fiscal year.
Hello.
Hello.
So, I just want to say this is merely a housekeeping exercise that we're doing. In past years, since I've been here, every time we had something unexpected come up, I would bring a budget amendment to you, and they got very cumbersome. In looking into best practices, I was advised to just do one after the year closed, to bring to council areas that we went over budget, to bring our budget into alignment. This is only required if on a fund level we spend more than is appropriated through the budget. So if, for example, on the general fund, if we spent more expenditures than what total expenditures were for the year, I would be required to get a budget amendment. Same with the enterprise fund. Fortunately, this is not the case. I do not have to be here doing this because we did not, even with these unexpected things coming up, go over our appropriations for the year on either of those funds, which is pretty amazing looking back over the year and the storms and inflation and everything, that we still maintained our spending to within appropriated amounts. However, and I discussed this with city manager, my goal in my office is to be as transparent as I possibly can, and so I want to bring things to you guys so that you are aware of them. One thing that I want to also underline is this money is already spent. So if you say no to my resolution, it's not saving us any money, okay? We are not changing the column on the budget report that says actual. We are changing the column that says budget. And this is to show that you guys are aware and approve of it. In talking to our auditors, he said, your approval is kind of implicit because you get a monthly budget report and these spendings are included in there. So by approving that budget report, you've already said, okay, we see it. But I just want to be very transparent. So I gave you a list of the things that I would like to amend. The total amendment for the general fund comes to $24,761. Now, part of that is, if you'll see, I'm reducing a line. We had set aside $312,500 for disaster cleanup after the storm, and it came in much less. So I'm reducing that line by $96,000. But the others, some of it was totally out of our control. Fuel costs obviously went up. Insurance costs went up. We have an old dump truck, and Cliff thought he should fix it. There was a couple things that we overlooked when we prepared the budget. Our wonderful Polaris software I'd overlooked, and so that's in there. Some of them, were things, the fire department had an opportunity for something they'd been working on for a few years with Lake Jackson to share, cost share. That came up, but they didn't know about it at budget time. So the net for general fund is $24,761. On enterprise fund, again, it's unforeseen things. Fuel obviously went up. We had some fence repairs after the storm that were not, there was no relief from FEMA or anything, and we had to pay for that fence. Again, the mini, old equipment, mini excavator repair. With the South Water Plant, there was some site drain lines that needed to be put in that weren't, expected at budget time. And then there was water engineering that you guys approved as far as, in discussion. We just didn't do an actual budget amendment. And then, as Cliff was talking about the overage on the water, we got a bill from BWA for $46,000 for our usage over the contracted amount. So the enterprise fund is a total of $140,465. Even with this all said, even with that spending, we're still within our appropriations for both funds. But I would just ask that you approve this so that our budget looks more in line with what we spent. Any questions?
Okay.
Do we have a motion?
Well, she said it's already spent.
Yeah, I'm not gonna get it back.
Make a motion to approve resolution 22-R-71, amending the FY 2022 budget to allow for unbudgeted expenditures during the fiscal year.
Okay, we have a motion made by Councilmember Yarborough. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Have a second by Councilmember Strawn. Councilmember Johnson, how do you vote, sir?
Aye.
Councilmember Strawn, how do you vote, ma'am?
Aye.
Councilmember Yarborough, how do you vote, sir?
Aye.
Councilmember Escalante, how do you vote, sir?
Aye.
Okay, let the record reflect that the motion carried.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we have we will move to executive session pursuant to Chapter 551.071, consultation with counsel on legal matters, consultation with city attorney regarding settlement litigation. So this is at 8:35.
Parks Director, Fire Chief,
and the police chief.
starting more child.
I was just the guy that kind of helped coordinate it.
Spend that much money. We're going forward.
Okay. Let's call the regular session back to order at 20:50 or 8:50 p.m. Do we have any action as a result of the executive session pursuant to Chapter 551.071, consultation with the legal counsel?
Make a motion for the city manager to accept the settlement from litigation.
Okay, we have a motion made by Councilmember Yarborough, seconded. Do we have a second?
A second.
Seconded by Councilmember Escalante. Councilmember Johnson, how do you vote, sir?
Aye.
Councilmember Strawn, how do you vote, ma'am?
Aye.
Councilmember Yarborough, how do you vote, sir?
Aye.
And Councilmember Escalante, how do you vote?
Aye.
Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. Okay, moving on to capital improvement projects update. Clifton.
That didn't sound very exciting.
No, it didn't.
No, I'm sorry. The meetings will continue until morale improves. Start with the CDBG CogMod grant. I was on the phone with Jared Engelke with Strand this week, and we've got everything worked out. This is the grant that's going to fund drainage improvements on Quail Run, also street improvements. We have flooding issues in that area, and also elevation challenges at the point of outfall. The grant, the funds that we have to spend on construction are just over $2 million. We put that to Strand, and we actually came up with a job scope much larger than what we anticipated. So in that area, which still does qualify as moderate income, there is Quail Run, Four Oaks, and Briar Creek, and it appears that we will be able to reconstruct the streets and drainage for all three of those streets, and possibly the water as well. That would put all new infrastructure within that area for all those homes from 2009 to current. All sewers will be reconstructed, water, streets, and drainage. So the only thing that he did with the grant, the water lines, put it really close to budget, which is okay. It's where we want it, but he separated the water into two alternates. If we can't end up affording all of it, we will take one section or the other and go with that. So that's all his paperwork is submitted to public management, and we're moving forward.
And they should have that application submitted right before Christmas.
Yes.
It's not due till January, so we're way ahead of the curve. GLO they called me last week. They were thrilled about how far ahead we are.
Yeah. Yep. Drainage project, it's progressed past the northeast corner of Ellis Park. The work is continuing south now on the east ditch towards the service center. Our anticipated final completion date is still right about the end of November. It could go off into the first week of December. So we're still on point there. Did talk with Jared, Mike Murphy with Matula this week. Mike Murphy did say if we were to anticipate moving on to a next phase, which we don't have the money, but if we did, it would be a 30% increase across the board. So that's where inflation is getting us.
That's for concrete.
Huh?
It's for concrete.
That's for every item he put a bid in on it, 30% across the board. He did say that if we would have been able to start the project a year ago, we would have gotten twice the project we got this time. It's just the nature of, it's not us. It just is what it is. Sidewalk, the bid advertisement should go out in January. Our goal is to have construction complete on the second phase of sidewalk by mid to late spring 2023. It will be finished up with the sidewalk funds. ARPA projects, design's ongoing. Advertisement for bids is going to be around the same time, first part of the year, hopefully January, February. And that money we do have, that allocation we have. Now we're ready to go as soon as they are. I want to make mention of the SCADA situation that happened. I'm sure, I think everybody understands now what happened. We assumed we had a power surge, and it cooked one of our alternators, the main alternator. It was unavoidable as far as we could see. We did
We did catch the situation before we dropped below 20 PSI at the tower, but we weren't going to go out in distribution and start taking measurements. Our main concern was to get water back into the system. I told Eric my feeling was with the chlorine residuals that we had coming back through the week and the fact that we could not prove, we don't have definitive proof that we fell below 20 PSI, I opted not to do the boil water notice and felt that that was a very safe move to make. Back up and running and it's fixed and hopefully it doesn't happen again. Streets, Missouri County continues. They've done all their stabilization work, I guess to be on the south side of Amberjack and the south side of Blue Marlin and west side of Amberjack. Lime has started on the other ones. It started raining. It's going to make quite a mess. They're anticipating having all the stabilization done on Blue Marlin and Amberjack up to Oakwood Shores Drive by the end of November. The cul-de-sacs will be done last, and then asphalt. Right now it is county's intention to stay in Richwood through the completion of the Oakwood Shores roads. They think they might have to stop at the end of November and wait till better weather, possibly in spring. But still in FY23 their intention is to stay, but they won't put it on paper. But that's their intent, is to stay through until it's all done. Other than that, I think that's about all I got.
I got a question on the water. So you're saying you lost the information, that you couldn't see what the pressure was. We don't have any manual meters that you can read?
No, we saw what the pressure was. We lost an alternator. We have two different sources. We have a analog meter on the tower, and we have two pressure transmitters.
So what was the concern then? You said
it was above 20 PSI. 20 PSI is our minimum operating pressure under any situation.
And you read that at the meter?
We read it at the meter and at the SCADA panel. We're at 23.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I thought you said you didn't know.
Oh, you said he had no proof that it went below.
Yeah.
Like in an area.
When they read it, it was
areas
above.
of the city.
The only reason I bring it up is because as you move out into distribution, you start getting friction loss and other things like that. Pressures might not have been at 20 PSI in the far reaches of distribution. But based on what we knew and based on the chlorine residuals, we felt that the water was not compromised in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Appreciate it, sir.
All right.
Always.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay. City Manager's report.
Mayor, Council, I'm pleased to report Marcus Smith, our new code enforcement officer, started today. He was actually in the office, so we're glad to have him on board. We'll get him to the next meeting. He just didn't get here till Sunday, so he was moving in. He was very tired today. We were glad to have him on board. Police Department had a surprise audit past week. No deficiencies were noted, and congratulations, Chief and staff, for doing a great job on that. Surprise audits are always fun. Yeah, I know. Does a great job, but it's pretty good when normally we know when audits are coming, and this was a surprise, so they did a good job. Detective Holmes and I attended the kickoff meeting for the Brazoria County EOC and working on the HMGP mitigation planning project. We're way ahead of schedule on that. Chief's also assisting with that, and we're updating our HMGP plan that we're part of for the county and all of us as well, so we're doing great on that. Continue work on the COGMOD grant. I think Cliff spoke on that. Many thanks this week as well this weekend for the police department and Mayor Boykin for attending the Brazosport ISD parade this past weekend in celebration of their water polo championship, and I believe also a runner-up group. And Tropical Outlook, there's no significant events on the forecast for the next 5 days. The chief assured me that we're about home free, so we're going to hold him to it.
Knock on wood right now.
Yeah, amen. Yeah, that's all I've got there.
All righty. Any questions? Okay, council member comments and reports.
I'd like to thank all the people in the city turned out for this meeting. I noticed a lot of them have left, but I appreciate y'all staying. I appreciate y'all coming. It is noticed. I'd like to thank KRB and William Mearsling for setting up the flags for Veterans Day. I'd like to thank all the veterans in attendance tonight and all the veterans on council, which is Matt, Mr. Rory, anybody else?
Philip.
Melissa, who's the wife of a veteran. That counts in my book.
Thank you.
Anyway, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay.
You're on the dice.
Melissa.
I was curious if we were going to discuss, I know we had gotten a response back from the district attorney. I wasn't sure if we were going to discuss it now, if that's a future agenda item.
Yeah, I was looking back and I should have caught it and I didn't. So, yeah, we need to put it as a future agenda item.
That's fine. I just wanted to add that one.
That's fine.
Okay, Matt?
Yeah, that was it. Thank you.
Y'all are so kind to not have Mr. Smith stay for this one on his first day. I'm sure he'll have many more.
Like Eric's first council meeting.
Yeah. Baptism by fire. As Councilmember Johnson said, great turnout again tonight. Hopefully we will start to see that. You know, there were comments made tonight about the number of volunteers in multiple arenas. There's plenty of smart people in this city, and you know, maybe you don't have time to sit on council. It's a 2-year term. It's a little longer commitment, but charter review, a few months, a more focused look at our city charter, and all the other boards and committees that we have come up. Planning and zoning, we've solicited a couple times in the last few years for that. So if you're watching this on YouTube afterwards, you know, if you're interested, let Kirsten know at the city, and she can at least hold it on file for in the future when, you know, we solicit for volunteers again. There was one other. Oh, position 5. So tonight, position 5 is empty. During the consent agenda, we formally accepted Councilmember Langford's resignation. So starting, I think, tomorrow, you'll see it's already online, Kirsten says. So advertisements will be around the city. Come see Kirsten for an application to serve the remainder of his term through May of 2024. Put your applications in and make it hard on us. So we'll have to pick someone at the December meeting we'll have to appoint. So that's all I've got.
All right. Rory?
Yeah, just to reiterate what everybody said, for everybody that came out today from the topic that we discussed about setbacks, you know, thank y'all for coming out and voicing y'all's opinions. They're heard. And, you know, I know there's been a lot of division, and whether it was right or wrong, but, you know, what's done is done. All we can do is move forward, not back. So I hope to see more harmony, both for the city and the residents, and just move forward and prosper. That's all I have.
Okay. All right, moving on to the mayor's report. Yes, I was very proud to represent our city at the Richwood parade this weekend for the water polo team championship. A lot of folks did come out, and that's a great a great accomplishment for any school team. And I didn't go in a vehicle of my own with a sign or anything. I should have put a nice sign on the patrol car. I didn't think about it, but I chose to ride with one of our officers. Our newest officer, poor girl, Chief, stuck her with me. And I told her that I apologized to her for having to drive Mr. Daisy around for the parade. But I appreciate the chief having somebody available. I appreciate her helping out, volunteering, or coming out and working with us on it. And it was a great success. I think Richwood was represented well there. And not because I was there, but because Samantha was there. And she represented the police department and the city well. The patrol car looked great, and it was a good time. We enjoyed it, and well, I enjoyed it. Now I'm not sure about her because I talked her ears off. Secondarily, I want to say thanks for everybody that came out tonight and help the system work the way it's supposed to. You know, there's always going to be winners and losers on either side of the coin, and but when it comes down to it, the decisions are made based on what the people hearing from the people. That's what we're here, is to represent the citizens. And again, let's move forward with it. If there's any divides out there, I would strongly urge the citizenry to get together and let's all work together to better our city and our neighborhoods, and do it with a common vision. I'd also like to thank the fire department. They've been busy again with grass fires and wildland fires. I've been listening to all the fire departments get out. Y'all got called out to 595 a couple of times. Been out on Hoskins Mountain Road a few times. A lot of folks don't realize that these wildland fires can be dangerous until you see them up close, especially when you see one running along and then it gets some fuel and it flares up about 30 foot. And then you see those in California that create their own wind atmospheres, all kinds of atmospheres. They have their little fire tornadoes. These things are, it's not the old grass fire that everybody used to think. They're going out there and knocking out the salt grass. There's a lot of danger into it. And these guys train hard. They've learned a lot, and they've done a great job. 30 years ago, if you would have asked the city for a brush truck, and when we tried to get a tanker rebuilt, it was like, well, that doesn't fight fire in the city. What does that do for us? That's all for the county. They understand that now. Every piece of fire apparatus that we have is very important for one reason or another. And believe me, if we didn't go out there, or they didn't go out there and fight them in the county, we might have them encroaching on our city. So thank y'all a great deal. I know our police officers have been busy. I've seen them out. And again, I'd like to thank all the veterans on the council, all the veterans in the city, and all the veterans that's made this place a great place to live. That's helped us keep this place free, our country. We tend to forget the sacrifices of others. We tend to forget that that's not a very pleasant place for those folks to be going. And it's very hard when they come back, because war is not the same as it was 50 years ago. There's too many dynamics with it now that just really boggle the mind. But our veterans, we owe them a great deal. And then last but not least, there was one other thing. I appreciate the staff, all the hard work they've done with the work that we've got, or we've had working on the issues that we've been dealing with lately. They do a good job. They keep the money in line. I'm very proud of all of the progress that we've made in the last few years. You want to look at the people that bring that progress in to us. Just look at the staff. Everybody's doing a great job. And with that, I think, and Councilman Langford. I really hated to see him go, but I understand the situation he's in, and I want to say that I appreciate every minute that he was here and all the things that the things that he did do, and the comments and the thoughtfulness that he brought into the council meetings. I hope to see him move back to Richwood one day and try it again. Maybe hopefully that'll be before I'm in a nursing home somewhere. So with that, that's all I've got. How about future agenda items? We've already talked about you've already got that one, Melissa's okay. Any other future agenda items? Okay.
Well, wait a minute, I'm thinking of one. December 17th is Wreaths Across America, so for a possible agenda item, maybe we sponsor something. I know that I've put in a volunteer for that, and there's a cemetery up in Angleton that's going to be laying wreaths, and maybe we can take part in that.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Or sponsor a wreath. So maybe put that on the future agenda item.
All right. That'd be great. Okay, anything else? Going once, going twice. This meeting is adjourned at